Hey guys, tonight, we're turning back to an era when anxiety had no name, and the fear in your heart might cause others to whisper demonic. This was a world where a panic attack didn't lead you to a therapist's office, but straight into a cold chapel. Where intrusive thoughts weren't soothed with expert advice, but drowned in holy water and examined by robed clergy. You didn't wake up on a mattress, but on damp straw in the stone cell of a monastery. Not to the warm glow of a bedside lamp, but to thick darkness and the distant echo of church bells, calling you out of your dream, and dragging you into a morning filled with nothing but loneliness. And if you're still here, listening, thank you. If these strange, quiet stories bring you something, whether it's curiosity or simply the feeling of companionship, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so I know I'm not whispering into the void. Leave a comment with your location and the time you're listening, too. Each little dot on the map warms my heart on these long storytelling nights. Now then. Turn down the lights. Switch on a fan if you'd like a gentle sound to hum beside you. Close your eyes, or leave them open, if you prefer. And together, we'll slip slowly into a world where no one knows what an anxiety disorder is. They only know that something feels wrong, and that maybe it calls for leeches. There is no diagnosis waiting to give meaning to your pain. No clipboard. No kind-eyed counselor sitting across from you, ready to nod empathetically as you speak. Outside your door, there is only a friar murmuring to himself in Latin, voice low and rhythmic, and a wooden cross hanging crookedly above the threshold like an unanswered question. Lately, you felt off. Not just a little tired, not simply out of sorts, but deeply, persistently wrong in a way you can't explain. There's a weight in your chest that tightens before the sun even rises. You barely eat. You sleep in fits, your dreams more vivid and unsettling than the world you wake to. Something inside you feels misaligned. But here, none of that matters. There's no language for depression, no model for mental health. In this time and place, there is only one explanation: your soul is unwell, you stir from a restless, broken sleep, limbs heavy under a coarse wool blanket that smells faintly of mildew and age. A bell tolls in the distance, echoing from a church tower somewhere beyond these walls. The early morning light leaks in through a narrow vertical slit carved high into the stone, a feature that feels more like a prison window than any architectural kindness. Outside, you hear hushed voices, and then one distinct phrase spoken in Latin reaches your ears: Salus animarum. Salvation of souls. Then you hear a creak. Long and slow. It moves like something out of a dream, heavy and deliberate. The kind of creak that makes your stomach twist. The oak door groans open and a man enters, cloaked in a brown robe, his head bowed beneath the weight of the candle stub he carries. In his other hand, he holds a small wooden bowl. The contents are unclear. It could be porridge. It could be medicine. It could be something worse. You push yourself upright, and every muscle in your body protests. It's not soreness from exertion but the aching stiffness that comes from curling up too tightly for too long, trying to protect yourself from fear you don't understand. You don't know why they took you from your village. The memory is foggy. A gathering of voices. Hands. Then darkness. The friar looks at you solemnly, as though reading your confusion on your face. He raises a hand, makes the sign of the cross, and speaks in a whisper. You have the melancholia, he says gently. But do not worry. We shall pray it away. Of course, there is no discussion here about brain chemistry or psychological trauma. No one asks about your past, your family, your thoughts. Here, suffering is explained through sin and imbalance. Your symptoms are seen not as illness, but as a sign of spiritual weakness, or worse, spiritual invasion. You are not sick in the mind. You are seen as corrupted in the soul. The word they use is melancholia. It folds your sadness, your anxiety, your sense of dread, your foggy mind into one ancient Latin label and offers a singular solution: prayer. some historians still debate whether the medieval church truly believed those like you were cursed, or whether they saw you as simply misguided and in need of moral correction. But what is clear, what you can feel in your bones, is this: your care now lies entirely in the hands of the church. And their version of care includes fasting, silence, and sometimes, even if delivered with the best intentions, a swift slap meant to drive out what they believe must be a demon. You glance around the cell. There is no comfort here. No softness. The only decoration is a fading painting of Saint Dymphna nailed to the wall, her image warped by time and candle smoke. She is the patron of the mentally afflicted, though her gaze is wide and unsettling rather than gentle. Her story is not one of peace. She was beheaded by her own father. The metaphor is not lost on you. The Middle Ages have never been subtle. You force yourself to swallow a few spoonfuls of whatever is in the bowl. It's lukewarm and bland, with a texture somewhere between gruel and regret. As you eat, the friar kneels at your side, eyes closed in concentration. His lips move in prayer. The words echo slightly in the cold room. His breath smells like garlic and the must of old parchment. You can tell he means well. He believes this ritual brings healing. You try not to resent him for it. Time passes, though how much, you're not sure. In a place like this, minutes blur into hours. You are not allowed to speak unless spoken to. You are told to reflect, to repent, to purify your thoughts. But your mind refuses to still. Thoughts ricochet around your skull, uninvited and insistent, like birds trapped in a bell tower. From somewhere beyond your cell, a door slams. Then a scream. Not a cry of fear, but something more primal, a low, guttural howl that cuts straight through you. Goosebumps crawl up your arms. The friar beside you flinches slightly, then quickly crosses himself again, his fingers moving faster this time. Brother Elias is having a bad day, he murmurs without looking at you. We must pray harder, and in that moment, you begin to wonder, what does a good day look like in this place? Eventually, you are taken outside. They call it air and contemplation. The cloistered courtyard is small, enclosed by stone arches and towering walls. You shuffle forward, feet heavy, past other figures who move like ghosts. A woman rocks gently, reciting psalms with eerie precision, her eyes unblinking. A man walks in endless circles, muttering about St. Michael's sword, waving his arms as though warding off invisible attackers. Another lies flat on his back in the grass, arms stretched wide in a cruciform position, whispering that he is already dead and waiting to rise. No one speaks to each other. Each person is lost in a storm only they can see. And yet the church believes this separation, this isolation, will bring healing. Medieval medicine was anchored in the belief of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Each emotion was tied to an imbalance of these bodily fluids. Feel too much, think too deeply, or lose your appetite, and it was clear, you had too much black bile. Melancholy. The solution? Drain it. But that horror, we'll save for the next section. For now, you sit beneath a twisted olive tree, its roots clawing through the cracks in the stone. It's the only patch of green in this otherwise gray courtyard. You try to take a deep breath. But the scent of unwashed robes, stale incense, and damp stone clings stubbornly to the air. Somewhere above, a bird chirps once, high and clear. You look up at it, momentarily transfixed. You wonder if it's a sign. A spirit. An angel. Then you shake the thought away. You're not insane. You're just tired. Overwhelmed. Sad in a way that feels ancient and bottomless, and no one here understands that. Still, there is something strange, something almost comforting, in the order of this place. Bells ring on the hour, marking time like punctuation in a sentence that never ends. Meals are served on schedule. Prayers are chanted in the same rhythm every day, rising and falling like the tide. Amidst the chaos inside your mind, this rigid structure is the only thing that holds. Later, as the candlelight dances against the high, curved ceiling of your cell, casting shadows that flicker and stretch like memories, you feel something stir inside you. It's not quite hope. It's too faint for that. But it is something. A glimmer. A sense that maybe, just maybe, you're not entirely alone in this, not yet, anyway. You are jolted awake before the sun has even dared to rise. Again. The bells begin their relentless tolling, loud and unyielding, slicing through the early silence with a cruel sort of precision. That same metallic clang that vibrates through your bones and seems intentionally crafted to make you question every choice that led you here, including the simple, now regrettable decision to lie down at all. But this morning feels different, though you cannot yet say how. The air carries with it a strange mixture of scents. Clove oil, unmistakably sharp. Holy water, faint but present. And something darker, burned feathers, perhaps, or scorched parchment. Someone, somewhere nearby, is preparing for a ritual. You are not in a hospital. Not in any place designed for recovery as you understand it. You are not even in a proper monastic cell. You're lying on a cot inside a former chapel, long stripped of its original purpose and now converted into what they call a treatment room. The walls are still adorned with remnants of frescoes, faded saints whose faces have blurred into abstraction. The altar has been cleared and replaced with a stool and a basin. Today, the friars have something new in store for you. Something more advanced, they say. More precise. They believe your despair, your breathless panic, the knot in your chest that will not ease, the way your thoughts spiral into darkness at night. All of it has a very specific origin. They believe you are possessed, not in the cinematic sense, not with the dramatic voice distortions or furniture flying across the room. That interpretation will come much later, shaped by theater and folklore. In this time, in this place, they believe there is a spiritual parasite lodged deep within your soul. An unseen presence, whispering fear into your heart, eroding your will to live, and convincing you to weep at supper for reasons you can't quite name. To be completely honest, you have not claimed visions. You have not spoken in languages you do not know. You have not floated inches above your cot or snarled at clergy. You simply no longer smile. And for them, that is more than enough. The priest you met earlier steps into the room once again. His appearance is different this time. More ceremonial. He wears a long stole around his neck, richly embroidered with golden thread, and carries a censer in one hand, its chains clinking softly as he swings it back and forth. A fragrant smoke pours from within, thick and bitter, causing your throat to tighten and your eyes to water the moment it fills the air. The room itself is dim, lit only by the flickering of half-melted candles. Their gentle light casts long, wavering shadows across the walls. For a moment, the space feels oddly intimate. Almost peaceful. Almost. But then you notice the way everyone is watching you. Their faces are fixed with nervous anticipation, as if they're bracing for something to burst forth from your chest at any moment. A young novice approaches, struggling under the weight of an enormous book. It is so large that he must carry it with both arms braced, the way one might carry a shield. The binding is cracked. The pages uneven. You suspect it is the Rituale Romanum, though it might just as easily be a much older manuscript, handwritten, copied and recopied by trembling fingers. The pages are filled with Latin. Prayers. Invocations. Instructions for what to do if the afflicted begins to writhe, to convulse, to speak in unnatural voices or languages unknown to the human ear. You have no intention of writhing. No plans to speak in tongues. But your body has not been entirely trustworthy lately. It does things on its own. Trembles without reason. Shakes at shadows. The friar begins to chant. His voice is deep and rhythmic, each syllable deliberate. Over and over again he repeats the same phrase. Libera nos malo. Deliver us from evil. His free hand rises and gently rests on the crown of your head. His touch is firm, not unkind, but there's a weight to it that makes you hold your breath. His palm is warm, slightly damp. He leans closer and murmurs a question into your ear. What is your name? You blink. Marjorie. He nods once, then leans even closer. His breath brushes your cheek, and who is inside you? You blink again. Still just Marjorie. His expression darkens. A small frown appears. That was not the response he wanted. Not the answer his ritual craves. Here's the thing. In medieval Europe, what you are experiencing is rarely seen as something internal. Your panic. Your fear. Your sorrow. They are not yours, not in the way you understand ownership. They are believed to be symptoms of moral failing. If you are anxious, perhaps you have wandered too far from the light of God. If you are depressed, it might be punishment for unknown sins. If your mind fractures and hears voices, then surely it must be the devil's interference. Historians continue to debate whether this worldview stemmed more from religious fear or from simple ignorance. Either way, the result is the same. Your inner self is no longer yours. It has become a battlefield. You are asked to confess. But not for your actions. Not for things you have done. You are asked to confess your thoughts. Every bitterness. Every doubt. Every flicker of jealousy or fear. Anything unholy you have entertained in your heart, even briefly. The friars lean in, watching you closely, waiting. You search for the words, but it is difficult to describe thoughts that feel alien, thoughts that do not seem to belong to you at all. Eventually, you speak. Your voice is soft. You admit to fear. You speak of your dreams, the dark ones that visit every night. You mention the strange hollowness inside your chest. A novice takes notes on a wax tablet, his stylus scratching with each admission. Another friar steps forward, holding up a reliquary. A small, ornate golden case. Within it, they say, is a relic, a sliver of bone from Saint Catherine. It is held reverently, then pressed against your temple. You are told to focus. You are told that healing is within reach, if only you believe hard enough. You try. You really do. But nothing changes. You still feel the tremble in your hands. You still feel like crying. And now, on top of that, you feel ashamed that the ritual did not work. That your faith was not enough. Eventually, the exorcism, or whatever softer name they use for it, comes to an end. There is no transformation. No dramatic moment. No shouting or thrashing. Just a heavy silence that settles awkwardly over the room. One friar leans toward another and whispers, low but not low enough, not a true possession, perhaps. Merely spiritual weakness. You feel the words hit you like a stone. You want to scream. To tear at the walls. To demand understanding. But you do none of that. Instead, you nod politely, thank them in a quiet voice, and return to your cot. It feels like your soul has just come back from a battle, one it never signed up for. By now, you know some of the others. There is Thomas, who cannot stop lighting candles. Over and over, in obsessive patterns. There is Beatrice, who speaks gently to a child no one else can see or hear. And poor Roderick, who will not touch his food unless someone taps the table exactly 3 times before each meal. You see them. You see the patterns. The rituals. The quiet desperation in their eyes. You recognize it. But what stands out even more is how others around you react. As if any small departure from normalcy is dangerous. And while the monks may be gentler than the mobs that roam outside the monastery walls, they are no less baffled. No less afraid. Their fear is quieter, but just as real. One friar attempts to comfort you. He speaks of Job, the biblical figure who suffered immeasurably. He too cried out in despair, the friar says softly. But he kept his faith. You want to appreciate his kindness. You want to see it for the genuine comfort it is meant to be. But somewhere deep inside, something recoils at the idea that your suffering must carry a lesson. Later, you overhear a different conversation. This one about the humors. The ancient Greek idea, still widely believed, that the body is governed by 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Perhaps, one friar suggests, your soul is not infected. Perhaps your body is simply misaligned. Too much black bile, maybe. That would explain the sadness. That would mean a new treatment. A different plan. A backup, in case the prayers and relics do not take effect. At least it is not another exorcism. You think back. You remember laughter. Once. A harvest feast, maybe. The smell of roasted apples. Your sister tripping over a goose and bursting into giggles. For a moment, everyone laughed. Even you. But now, even the idea of smiling feels suspicious. Like joy might make them examine you more closely. As if happiness is dangerous. This world does not deal in nuance. Everything is absolute. You are either righteous or damned. Whole or broken. Blessed or cursed. Later, you are offered communion. A wafer, small and dry. A sip of wine. It is meant to cleanse, to reconnect you with the divine. But all you taste is ash. Not the real flavor, but the sensation. The absence of sweetness. The overwhelming sense that joy no longer lives here. Or perhaps it left long ago, with the last person who dared to laugh during prayer. When night falls, you are given a candle and told to sit in silence. You kneel on the cold stone floor, as you have done countless times before. The light flickers in front of you. The shadows dance. And for the briefest moment, you feel the faintest sliver of hope. Perhaps this stillness could help. Perhaps the silence might clear your mind. Perhaps, just perhaps, peace lies somewhere in the space between the chants and the candlelight. Then the flame sputters. The cold returns. The door shuts behind you with a hollow click, and once again, you are alone, just you. And your mind. And the silence. And whatever invisible force they still believe is hiding inside you. You wake with a jolt. Not from the familiar clang of bells this time. It is something else. A sound that cuts deeper. A scream. It rises from the courtyard outside, long and ragged, the kind of scream that carries no theatricality, no flair for drama. This one is different. It is real. It is raw. It is soaked in undiluted pain, the sort that makes your skin tighten and your stomach coil. You sit up on your straw-stuffed mattress, the coarse fabric itching against your neck, and wince as your spine protests the movement. You are stiff. Stiff from the cold that clings to the stones, from the damp that seeps into your bones, from the simple act of existing another day in this place. But the sound continues. And now it is closer. Closer still. You hear heavy footsteps. Shouts. Another scream, this one hoarser, more desperate. The wooden door creaks open. It always creaks, but somehow today it sounds more ominous. A monk steps into the room. His robe is darker than the others, deep brown and rough around the edges, his face obscured by the low light. He says nothing. He simply lifts a hand and beckons. The gesture is firm. You obey. You rise slowly, joints aching, and follow him down the corridor, your feet moving with the reluctant rhythm of someone being led. not someone walking by choice. You trail behind him like livestock being herded, through winding passageways lit only by flickering torchlight. The flames jump and sputter with each passing breath of air, casting shadows that twist and reach along the walls. You pass Beatrice on the staircase. She's sitting alone on a step, knees pulled to her chest, still whispering to the invisible child she carries with her everywhere. You offer her a small, quiet nod. The kind meant for solidarity. But her eyes do not move. She is elsewhere. Entirely. You are led to a room that smells wrong before you even cross the threshold. The scent hits you like a blow. Sharp vinegar. Coppery blood. Smoke. Something sour beneath it all. Your breath catches, and a dull sense of dread begins to press against your chest. This is not a chapel. Not a place for prayer. It is a medical chamber, although that word feels far too generous for what lies before you. This room was built not for comfort or healing, but for procedure. In one corner stands a wooden chair fitted with cracked leather straps, the kind that have grown stiff with age and repeated use. In another corner, a small fire crackles in a stone basin, its heat feeding a collection of iron tools placed nearby. Some glow faintly red. At the center of the room, a long table stretches out under the flickering light, its surface deeply stained with dark blotches that speak of old blood and frequent treatments. Your stomach sinks as you realize what this means. You are the subject today. You are the treatment. A man enters. He is not a friar. He wears no robes. Instead, he is dressed in a heavy coat, fur-lined along the collar and cuffs, a silver chain draped around his neck. There is a weight to his presence. He walks with the ease of someone who holds authority. You know without needing to be told that he is the physician. The man of science. Or what passes for it here. You brace yourself. The rumors about him have drifted through the halls like smoke. He is the one who balances the humors. He smiles. It is not a cruel smile, but there is a knowing glint in his eyes. The glint of someone who is convinced that they understand you better than you understand yourself. He lifts a small blade, holding it delicately between two fingers. It is not large, but the metal shines with an edge honed for precision. You feel your stomach twist. You have too much black bile, he says calmly. It causes melancholia. We must draw it out, bloodletting. The medieval cure for everything and anything. Are you sad? Bleed. Are you restless? Bleed. Did you frown too long during supper? Then clearly, it is time to bleed. He gestures toward the chair. You hesitate. Your feet do not move. Two novices step forward without speaking. Their touch is firm but gentle as they guide you toward the seat and lower you into it. The leather straps go around your wrists. They are not pulled tight enough to cause pain, but they are not optional either. You are secure. You are still. The physician unwraps a bundle of tools from a cloth roll. Lancets. Small and curved. Glass cups, some with dried residue clinging to their insides. A few leeches in a jar, lazily wriggling in a shallow pool of water. You do not recognize half of the instruments. You do not want to. Centuries ago, the scholar Galen proposed that the human body was a fragile balance of four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Good health depended on harmony. Imbalance was the root of all suffering. Too much black bile led to sadness and despair. Too much yellow bile meant rage. Too much blood brought about manic joy. And too much phlegm dulled the senses. So medicine, in this era, became obsessed with control. With restoring balance through draining, purging, sweating, and burning. Anything to return the body to order. Historians still debate whether these methods were sincere attempts to heal or simply rituals of controlled suffering. Whatever the intent, You are about to lose a measure of yourself. A pint of blood, at least, the blade touches your skin. A grazing sensation. A sting. Then warmth. Then the soft, unnerving trickle of blood sliding down your arm. You look away. You focus on the torchlight. On the stone ceiling. On anything other than the sensation of being drained. The physician leans in and examines the stream with fascination, muttering something about the color, noting that it is not dark enough to indicate pure bile, but perhaps useful nonetheless. He presses a bundle of moss to the wound. It smells of earth and rot. Then he wraps your forearm in a rough strip of linen and steps back, satisfied with his work. You are dizzy. Not metaphorically. Literally. The edges of the room begin to blur. Your thoughts wobble. Your stomach churns. The physician hands you a goblet filled with a bitter liquid. You take a sip. The taste is sharp and unfamiliar. Wormwood, perhaps. Or something worse. He nods. To fortify the spirit, he says, as if that is enough. You remain in the chair, quiet, while the room tilts around you. Your body hums, not with clarity, not with healing, but with something that feels much closer to shock. You wonder, as your pulse slows and your hands tremble, if the sadness they pulled from you had somewhere to go. Did it seep into the floorboards? Did it vanish in the rising smoke? Or is it still here, hanging in the air, waiting for a way back in? The next day, the process repeats. This time, it is not you. It is Roderick. The man who cannot eat without tapping the table exactly 3 times. Last night, he forgot. Or perhaps he resisted. And now he is screaming. He clutches his chest and cries out about fire ants burrowing beneath his ribs. The physician is called again. The diagnosis is swift. More black bile. More imbalance. More blood. This time the bleeding comes from the foot. You try not to watch. You look away. But the sound is harder to escape. The sound of metal meeting skin. Of frantic breathing. Of prayers muttered through clenched teeth. Later, Roderick sleeps for 18 hours straight and wakes up sobbing into his blanket. The friars observe him with gentle nods. They call it progress. That evening, your meal arrives. A bowl of boiled vegetables and a hunk of hard, dry bread. The smell makes your stomach tighten. You eat anyway. Not because you are hungry. Hunger left days ago. You eat because you fear what refusal might mean. Refuse a meal, and they may declare imbalance again. They may reach for the lancet. It is easy now to fall into bitterness. To feel that none of this makes sense. But part of you remembers something one of the friars said the day before, as he wrapped your arm with shaking hands. He had looked at you with something like sorrow in his eyes. We do this because we must try something, he said, and perhaps that is the saddest truth of all. This is not cruelty. It is desperation. A world full of people fumbling in the dark, trying to mend what they do not understand with the only tools they have. That night, you are allowed outside again. You sit beneath the twisted olive tree, the same one you visited before. Its branches stretch upward like fingers reaching toward the sky. The stars above are faint, but they glimmer, scattered across the dark like tiny candle holes poked into black velvet. You breathe slowly, trying to ignore the ache in your arm. You try not to think about the dizziness or the fear or the hollow certainty that no one is coming to rescue you. Then you hear footsteps beside you. It is Thomas. He says nothing. He sits close. Cross-legged on the ground, his eyes fixed on the horizon. After a moment, he lifts his hand and begins tapping his fingers softly against the dirt. 3 steady beats. A quiet ritual. A rhythm. A small act of order in a world that has none. You reach out. You tap back. 3 times, and in that fragile moment, a warmth stirs beneath your ribs. Not hope. Not quite. But something gentler. Something quieter. For the first time in weeks, you feel a flicker of connection. For the first time in weeks, you do not feel completely alone. You don't even get to finish your stale breakfast biscuit before a pair of unfamiliar hands begins tying something around your wrist. It's a thin strip of fabric, faded blue with frayed edges, as if it has been used before. Sewn into the fabric is a tiny pouch, lumpy and uneven. You can feel the contents shifting slightly as it's secured against your skin. Inside, they tell you, is powdered rose quartz, meant to soothe the spirit, dried sage leaves for purification, a fragment of Saint Agatha's robe for divine protection, and, rather inexplicably, a pinch of crushed seashell. For tranquility, mutters the old herbalist, her voice hoarse from years of smoke and wind, tightening the cord with the firm finality of someone sealing a promise. It almost feels as if she is trying to physically hold your nerves in place, as though tying the fabric might keep everything inside from unraveling. She is not a friar. Not part of the cloister's routine. She wears no habit. Instead, she is wrapped in layers of heavy embroidered wool, the hem stiff with dirt and time. Her garments carry the scent of chamomile tea steeped too long and the unmistakable musk of goat hair. She has walked from the village, that much is clear, her boots still crusted with dried mud. She calls herself a healer, though the friars never say the word out loud. Among the whispers, she's known by other names: cunning woman, herb wife, wise widow. The title depends on the weather, the speaker's mood, and whether or not her latest cure actually worked. Her hands are thick-skinned and gnarled, the kind of hands that have pulled roots from frozen soil, stitched up animal wounds, and stirred boiling pots of leaves for hours without flinching. Her fingernails are black with soil, not filth, and she smells faintly of smoke, vinegar, and steeped bark. Slung over one shoulder is a sack that jingles faintly as she moves, filled with glass bottles, cloth sachets, bundles of herbs tied with twine, and small corked vials that carry the sharp, pungent promise of something bitter. This is not the educated physician who came with iron blades and theories of bile. This is someone older, someone whose methods predate books and bloodletting, someone whose authority comes not from scrolls, but from seasons. You're not sure which feels more dangerous. She studies you carefully, as if reading the lines in your face like tea leaves. Without asking, she tilts your chin upward with a rough palm. Her fingers are warm but firm. She leans in close. Eyes narrowed, breath smelling faintly of cloves and dried apples. Eyes like lake water, she murmurs. Too many storms passed through. You blink, caught between confusion and discomfort, unsure whether to interpret her words as a compliment, a warning, or a curse. From a fold in her layered coat, she pulls a flask. The liquid inside is murky green, thick and sluggish, with something floating near the bottom that looks like a tiny stem. She removes the stopper with her teeth and thrusts the flask toward you. Drink, she commands, as casually as if offering water. You hesitate. The last time someone handed you a drink in this place, it tasted of melted candle wax and left your mouth dry for hours. But this one smells different. It smells of earth after rain. Of bitterness and bark. Of crushed leaves and something living. You raise the flask to your lips. The taste is sharp, almost sour, like licking a moss-covered stone, but you manage a small swallow. She watches you closely. St. John's wort, she explains. And fennel. For sadness. Then she begins listing the ingredients aloud, ticking them off on her fingers as if reciting a recipe handed down through generations. Vervain. Betony. Skullcap. Perhaps a pinch of mugwort. Herbs meant to steady the mind, loosen the grip of fear, ease the shaking of the soul. It's an entangled mess of old plant names and half-remembered Latin, but somehow, it feels closer to kindness than the cold metal of the physician's blade ever did. In medieval Europe, folk remedies wove quietly through the cracks of official medicine. While the learned men quoted Galen and swore by the balance of humors, villagers shared recipes around hearths. Remedies passed down by grandmothers, by widows, by midwives. Potions brewed to calm sorrow, poultices mixed to soothe terror, tinctures prepared in secret to ward off shadows at night. Historians still argue whether these healers were revered as miracle workers or hunted as witches in waiting. The truth lies somewhere in between. It always did. Their worth was judged not by faith or doctrine, but by outcome. If you walked away smiling, they were saints. If you didn't, they were heretics. The woman begins laying objects in a slow arc around you. It is deliberate, almost sacred. A lump of ironstone, rough and solid, for strength. A soft feather, gray and delicate, for peaceful dreams. A slice of red apple, slightly browning at the edges. A small ribbon dyed with onion skin. You are not certain whether you are being healed or quietly redecorated. Either way, no one stops her. She reaches into her bag again and draws out a bundle wrapped in faded linen. She opens it with care, unfolding it layer by layer like a sacred relic. Inside is a wax doll, roughly the size of your palm, shaped like a person only in the loosest sense. It is bound with string and tiny sprigs of rosemary. There is no face, no identity. Just a suggestion of a figure. This is your shadow, she says, her voice softer now. We take the burden from you. Place it here. Then bury it where the sun can't find it. You feel something stir in your throat. A laugh. A sob. You are not sure which will come out. So instead, you simply nod. The friars say nothing. They neither interrupt nor interfere. They watch from a distance, letting this quiet ceremony unfold. Officially, the Church does not endorse these practices. But here, in a place far from Rome, in a corner of the world where suffering outpaces Scripture, there is space for silence. The friars do not bless it, but they do not forbid it either. There is an unspoken agreement that sometimes the soul requires more than prayers and fasting. Sometimes it needs symbols. It needs ritual. It needs a doll made of wax and herbs. You watch as the woman wraps the figure again, whispers something under her breath, and vanishes down the corridor, cradling the bundle as though it contains a life. You do not follow her. You do not ask where she buries it. Later, another patient returns from her visit with the herbalist. She's grinning, a strange light in her eyes. She said, "I'm cursed by a toad," she says, giggling as she curls into her blanket. Imagine that. A toad, of all things. That night, your sleep is filled with odd but gentle dreams. Wide fields of lavender. Hills that roll like waves. The distant sound of bells that never ring. You wake slowly, the memory of it all still clinging to your skin. You do not feel healed, but you do not feel worse. And in a place like this, that alone feels like a victory, in the courtyard, you begin to notice others wearing charms like yours. Small fabric pouches, braided cords, pins carved from copper. Some tuck dried rosemary into their sleeves. Others hold smooth stones marked with odd symbols. None of this is part of church teaching. Yet it is everywhere. The friars seem not to see it. Or perhaps they have learned to look the other way. You hear talk of other practices. Quiet whispers passed along in the shadows. There is a woman in the north who makes patients walk backward into a stream at midnight to cleanse madness. A man who claims sorrow can be removed by staring into a dog's eyes until both blink in unison. It is absurd. It is superstition. It is nonsense. But when clarity is nowhere to be found, even nonsense starts to feel like salvation. Your body still aches. Your thoughts still spin. But now you carry something else. A charm, a story, a thread of belief. A sign that someone tried to help you. Not by draining your veins or shouting scripture, but by seeing you. By recognizing your pain and honoring it with ritual and touch. By placing it into a doll and promising to bury it far from light, you walk the courtyard, your amulet brushing softly against your wrist, and for the first time in many days, no one avoids your eyes. You see Thomas again, sitting by the wall, tapping his rhythm. His fingers move in a new pattern now. 5 taps, pause, 3. You try it once, unsure. He looks up and smiles, faint but real. Nearby, Beatrice hums softly, her arms cradling the invisible child. Her tune is unfamiliar until it suddenly isn't, a lullaby you once heard your mother sing long ago, when the nights were safe. Even Roderick, still wrapped in fresh bandages from his last bleeding, sits beside a patch of rosemary he insists he planted by sheer force of thought. You begin to wonder. Perhaps healing is not always about curing. Perhaps it is about being noticed. About having your pain seen and treated as something real. Something that deserves care. Even if the method is strange. Even if the symbols are muddied and the rituals unorthodox, even if all you have is a doll, a whisper, and a pinch of seashell dust. The clatter of hooves wakes you this time. It is abrupt and loud, sharper than any bell or chant, and utterly foreign to the quiet rhythm that usually governs the monastery. You sit up slowly, startled, heart already thudding in anticipation of something new, something outside the cloistered repetition. Horses, you think. Horses in the courtyard. That should not be happening. You shuffle to the small window slit carved into the stone wall and peer out, pressing your face to the cold edge. What you see confirms your suspicion. Not the usual procession of friars or the occasional delivery cart creaking in from the village, but something rare, almost shimmering against the gray velvet. Deep red, almost black in the shadows. Embroidery that glints in the sun. Gold stitching along sleeves and hems. Tall boots without holes, clean and gleaming. A glimpse of a ring set with a stone as large as your fingernail. Nobility. The kind of people who never set foot in places like this unless something had gone terribly wrong. It turns out it is not just villagers and peasants like you who find themselves plagued by the weight of melancholia. Today, the new arrival is a young noblewoman, flanked by 2 armed men in full chainmail. Their armor clinks gently with every step. Behind them walks a lady's maid with trembling hands and tear-reddened eyes, clutching a silk kerchief like it might keep her grounded. The noblewoman's name is Lady Isolde. You hear it whispered before you see her up close. And when she passes below your window, you observe her carefully. She does not look unwell in the way you have come to recognize. There is no wildness in her eyes, no trembling in her limbs. She is pale, yes, but it is the sort of pale that speaks of soft pillows and shaded gardens, not fever or fear. Her posture is elegant, her chin slightly lifted. Her gown is expertly tailored, the fabric heavy and expensive. Even the scent that lingers as she moves is telling. Not the sweat and vinegar of sickness. It is rosewater. Faint but unmistakable. Her sadness is perfumed. She is ushered through the courtyard and past the chapel with a level of care and respect you have never once received. Every gesture around her is deferential. Every movement calibrated to avoid upsetting her delicate state. You watch all of this with a strange mix of fascination and something heavier. Something like envy. It does not take long for you to notice the difference in treatment. The contrast is impossible to ignore. Where your own symptoms earned you a swift bleeding, a cramped cell, and a funeral for a wax doll. Lady Isolde is given parchment and a quill. A real quill. Not a broken nib or a wax tablet half-scratched by others. They give her ink. And a table. And privacy. She is installed in a private chamber in the East Wing, which, until now, you did not even know existed. From her window, she can see the rolling green hills beyond the cloister walls. Her bed is not stuffed with straw, but feathers. Her meals arrive on trays lined with cloth. You hear reports of honeyed figs and warm milk steeped with cinnamon. Instead of silence and fasting, she is offered letters from home, read aloud by her maid. She walks daily through the herb garden, escorted by a young friar whose features are gentle and whose eyes grow more poetic each day. She has named her condition the heaviness. You overhear her say so one afternoon while seated on a bench near the lavender. Her voice is soft and deliberate, each word carefully chosen. It comes in like fog, she says. There is no warning. One moment, I am present, and the next, it is simply, there. The friar beside her nods, face solemn. God tests his most precious vessels, he replies, as if quoting something holy. You suppress the urge to groan aloud. It would not be wise. But you think it. It becomes increasingly clear to you, with every passing day, that nobility and commoners are permitted vastly different experiences of suffering. When you weep, it is evidence of imbalance or spiritual decay. When Lady Isolde sighs wistfully, it is a sign of refinement. Your tears are a problem to be corrected. Hers are poetry waiting to be written. You were strapped to a chair for reciting a strange verse at dinner. She composes full poems during mealtimes, and they are copied down by a monk with careful penmanship and stored in the abbey's archives. Some scholars, you recall, have debated the idea of noble melancholia. They argue whether it was truly a medical diagnosis or a convenient label that allowed the wealthy to feel deeply without facing consequences. The distinction matters little here. What matters is the result. And you are not the only one who sees it. Thomas, never one to hide his opinions, rolls his eyes so often at the situation that the friars have begun warning him he might injure something. Beatrice, not to be outdone, has begun imitating Lady Isolde's accent with surprising precision, announcing that her invisible child now holds a title of nobility. Baroness of Buttercup Hill, she proclaims, curtsying to no one in particular. Roderick has taken the idea further. He insists he is now Sir Roderick of the Windmill, speaks in rhyming couplets, and claims that any non-rhymed sentence is beneath his station. The friars frown upon this behavior. Of course, but they cannot truly punish it. At the very least, everyone is bathing more regularly now. Perhaps even nobility has its benefits. You catch glimpses of Lady Isolde from time to time, usually during her walks. She moves slowly, deliberately, like someone wearing shoes made of grief. The poetic friar is never far behind. Sometimes he reads to her from scripture, other times from ancient poems you can't recognize. She is allowed solitude, creativity, moments of quiet. You, on the other hand, were handed a blunt stylus and told to carve prayers into a wax tablet already riddled with someone else's panic. Then comes a moment of drama. It is mid-afternoon, the sun high and warm, when Lady Isolde collapses in the herb garden. A swoon, complete with fluttering eyelashes and a gasp soft as silk. You are not there, but the sounds tell the story. The clatter of sandals as the friar runs. The sharp intake of breath from the maid. The hurried shuffle of multiple robes. She is lifted, gently, as though made of glass, and carried indoors. Her expression, according to one novice, remains composed. Regal. Even in unconsciousness, she retains grace. Later, when you ask a passing novice if she is recovering, he nods quickly. Oh, yes, he says. It was only nerves. Too much introspection, perhaps. You nod back, lips tight. Right. Just nerves, but then something shifts. A day passes, and then another, and while you are outside near the olive tree that never blooms, whispering prayers you no longer expect to be answered, you feel someone standing beside you. You turn your head slightly and see her. Lady Isolde. Her presence is quiet, her hands clasped in front of her, posture perfect as always. She does not speak right away. Just stands there, eyes focused on something far beyond the cloister walls. Finally, she speaks. A whisper. A question: do you ever think maybe we're not the broken ones? The words hang in the air between you. Heavy. Sincere. Her voice has none of its usual practiced softness. It sounds tired. Honest. And in that moment, she looks no different from anyone else here. She looks like someone who has been waiting for answers in silence. Someone who has stared at walls and listened for divine replies that never came. You blink, then nod. Slowly. Carefully. Not sure if you're allowed to agree, but doing it anyway. She exhales deeply, as if she has been holding that breath for months. Then she turns and walks away, not saying another word. That night, her question lingers in your mind like a stone at the bottom of a well. You think of Beatrice, gently swaying as she hums to the invisible child in her arms. You think of Thomas, tapping his fingers in rhythm no one else understands. You think of Roderick, counting his steps, pausing when the rhyme doesn't land just right. And you think of yourself. Still hurting. Still here. Still breathing. Maybe you are not broken. Maybe the world simply does not know how to hold people who feel too much, too deeply, too often. There is comfort in that idea. Fragile, perhaps. But real. That night, your dreams are not chaotic. They are soft. You dream of a world where sadness is met with compassion instead of suspicion. Where pain is not a flaw to be excised, but a signal to be listened to. A world where people sit with each other in silence, offering warm bread, open ears, and better questions, instead of blades and prayers meant to cast something out. You wake up, and the world is exactly the same. The stone walls remain. The rituals continue. The ache in your bones has not left, but the dream lingers. Like a faint perfume clinging to the edges of your memory. It stays with you as you rise, as you wash, as you return to the rhythm of the cloister. And somehow, impossibly, it is enough to keep you standing. At least for today. There is a strange, hollow cheer drifting in from the village today. It carries on the wind like an echo of a world that has not yet forgotten how to be happy. Someone, it seems, has brought a troupe of performers into town. Jesters with painted faces and jangling bells. Tumblers who twist through the air like ribbons caught in a breeze. Musicians with flutes and drums who fill the streets with a kind of joy that feels both wild and fragile. The friars disapprove, of course. Too much laughter. Too much music. Too much color and noise and movement that does not lead directly to God. Temptation, they call it. Distraction. But the townspeople are gathering anyway. You hear them even from within the monastery walls. The hum of excitement spreading like smoke. Some of the patients at the priory have wandered closer to the square, escorted or loosely supervised, hoping to catch a glimpse of the festivities. They peer through cracks in fences or press against gates that keep them tethered to this place. You are not permitted to leave the monastery grounds. That freedom, however small, does not extend to you. But today, you are given something else instead. A change. A shift in routine. You are allowed to walk to the outer gardens. It is framed as a reward. A gesture of goodwill. A small privilege extended to you as recognition for your progress. The official reason, whispered kindly by one of the younger friars, is that you have been responding well to your most recent treatments. But you know the real reason. You have not screamed in 3 days. You have not wept in front of the others. You have eaten your meals and swallowed your herbs and knelt for prayers. You have made yourself small and quiet and manageable. So now you are beneath a tree in the garden. The tree is half dead, its bark rough and peeling. The apples that grow from its crooked branches are mottled and soft, not quite spoiled but not quite ripe either. Still, it is a different view. A patch of sky, a breeze, the faint sound of laughter floating over the walls. You sit in the grass and close your eyes, trying to follow the rhythm of distant drums. You can hear the clatter of stilts striking cobblestones. The rising giggle of children delighted by something you cannot see. For a few moments, you imagine what it must feel like to be there. Not as a patient. Not as a warning. But simply as a person. Someone among many. Someone laughing. Your brief moment of imagining is interrupted when a shadow falls across your lap. You open your eyes to find a friar standing in front of you, holding a wooden bucket. His expression is cheerful, his tone bright. Too bright, time for duty, he says with a smile that does not quite reach his eyes. We clean the cage today. The words settle like ash in your mouth. The cage, it is not often mentioned. Not openly. But everyone knows it exists. Tucked away in the farthest corner of the monastery grounds, hidden behind hedges and heavy doors, beyond where visitors are permitted to wander. It is a structure of thick wood and rusted iron, shaped like a birdcage but built for something far less free. Large enough to hold a person. Bound tightly with metal. It has no lock because it does not need one. Once the door is shut, the message is clear, you follow the friar in silence. The bucket swings in your hand, sloshing slightly. It is filled with sour-smelling vinegar, cloth scraps, and a stiff-bristled brush. As you approach, your stomach clenches. You had hoped never to see the cage in person, it is worse than you imagined. The wood is warped, darkened by time and dampness. The iron bands are flecked with orange rust and deep scratches. A hatch in the base swings open just wide enough for a bowl of food to be pushed through. You stare at it, heart low and heavy. You have heard the stories. Villagers who spoke to themselves. People who twitched or muttered or danced when they should have been still. Locked up. Not as punishment, you are told. Of course not. It is always part of treatment. A necessary measure. A way to restore order to the soul through silence and reflection. The truth feels simpler. People were afraid of them. And fear finds cages. You kneel beside the bars and begin to scrub. The vinegar bites at your nose. The cloth rough against your palms. The friar stands behind you, softly reciting a psalm about purification, his voice rhythmic and unwavering. But the words do not comfort you. The cage smells of rust and rot, but underneath that is something worse. A scent with no name. Shame, perhaps. Abandonment. Despair. You scrub harder, as if removing the stain of memory itself. You have never been placed inside this cage, yet, the knowledge that it is clean now, ready for use, makes you uneasy. You do not scrub alone for long. Another patient is brought out. Not someone new. A man you recognize. He walks the halls most days, humming to himself in strange, syncopated patterns. His name, you think, is Matthew. He has gentle eyes and always smiles at the birds in the windowsill. But apparently that is not enough. You overheard the friars talking in hushed voices earlier that morning. He climbed the roof last night. They say he was trying to fly. He is led to the cage. Not violently. Not with force or resistance. Just firmly. As if this has happened before. As if this is a step in a known process. He is helped inside, and the door swings shut with a sound that feels like finality. He sits cross-legged, his eyes distant. His humming grows louder, faster, then softer again, like a tide. You are told that it is for his safety. He will be released by nightfall. Maybe, you do not know if that is true, you wonder what it feels like inside. Whether the bars begin to blur if you stare long enough. Whether the cold from the floor reaches your bones. Whether the people who pass by look at you and see a person, or a warning sign nailed to a post. Thomas walks past and pauses. He sees the man and flinches. His hands twitch but do not tap. Beatrice clutches her invisible child closer and begins to murmur beneath her breath. Bad for the spirit, she whispers. Cages are bad for the spirit. Roderick walks by without turning his head. His mouth is set in a straight line. He will not look at all. You keep scrubbing. You keep breathing. Later that evening, when the sun has dipped low and the garden is fading into shadow, you find the courage to speak. Quietly. Carefully. You approach one of the older friars, the one who sometimes smiles like he remembers being human. You ask if the man in the cage might be given a blanket. Something soft. Something warm. The friar pauses. Looks at you, and tilts his head. Then, slowly, he smiles. Compassion is a sign of healing, he says. You are not sure if that is meant to reassure you or warn you. The next morning, the cage is empty. The man is back in the halls. He walks slower now. His humming is quieter. He does not look at anyone directly. When doors creak or voices rise, he startles. You think of offering him something small. The pouch of herbs and string still tied around your wrist. A gesture. A symbol. But you hesitate. What if he misunderstands? What if he thinks it is a curse? What if he thinks you are? So instead, when the meal bell rings, you find him in the dining room. You carry your tray and sit beside him. Close enough that your shoulders touch. You say nothing. Neither does he. But he does not move away. That night, your dreams return. They are filled with cages, hundreds of them. Thousands. Some are made of thick iron and heavy chains. Some are woven from reeds and hung from trees. Some are invisible. Made of silence. Made of shame. Made of words spoken too many times or never spoken at all. Some are so small you do not know they exist until you try to stand up and find that your head hits the ceiling. And in every one of them, someone sits alone. Humming. Crying. Whispering truths the world does not want to hear. You wake cold, but calm, and a thought comes to you. Quiet. Steady. The worst part is not the cage itself, it is realizing that to the outside world, there was never a lock on the door, because the door was never meant to keep them out, it was meant to keep you in. The monastery grows quieter the deeper you go. With every step past the herb gardens, where rosemary and rue bend in the wind like bowed heads, the hush thickens. You pass the cloistered cells, their wooden doors closed tight, with only slivers of light escaping beneath them. You move beyond the echoing chapel, where voices rise like mist toward vaulted ceilings painted with saints and sorrow. And then you descend, into a part of the priory rarely spoken of. A place avoided even by those who pretend to fear nothing but sin. Today, that is where you are going. It begins at morning prayer. The stone floor is cold beneath your knees, the incense hanging heavy in the air like a curtain. The friars chant in a low rhythm, their words blending together into something both holy and hollow. You are trying to keep your focus, trying to keep your mind still, when a shadow appears beside you. The friar with the ink-stained cuff stands silently, his expression unreadable. He does not speak. He simply lifts one hand and gestures. A quiet summons. You do not ask where or why. You rise and follow, not because you agree. Not because you are ready. But because saying no in this place does not always make a difference. You have long since stopped searching for the reasons behind these routines. The logic here, if it exists, bends in ways you cannot follow. You just hope that this path, unlike some others, does not end with bleeding or leeches or needles pressed too deep into the skin. The friar leads you down a narrow staircase, one carved directly into the ancient stone. The walls are damp to the touch. Your fingers trail against them for balance, and the chill seeps into your bones like a warning. With each step, the air grows colder, more stale. The flickering torchlight on the walls has turned pale and blue, its glow devoured by the surrounding dampness. Breathing becomes more difficult. Each inhale feels like pulling wool into your lungs, and then you see the door. It is smaller than you expected. Thick and iron riveted. Set into the wall like a mouth that does not open often. There is no visible lock, only a single carved cross at eye level. The friar places both hands on the handle and pushes with effort. The door groans on its hinges, reluctant. When it opens, he steps aside and looks at you with the barest nod. You are meant to go in alone, so you do. Inside, the air is different. Still and dense. This is not the quiet of reverence or study. This is the quiet of absence. Of things left unsaid. No echo. No breath. Just silence. Deep and absolute. The kind of silence that swallows sound before it can form. The room stretches ahead like a corridor carved from stone and shadow. Along each wall are doors, set evenly apart, with small windows at eye height. Each one bears a bolt on the outside. Just one slide, and the occupant cannot leave. They call this place the quiet cloister. You peer into the first window. Inside, a man sits cross-legged on the floor. His back is against the wall, his eyes shut tight. His lips move, though no sound escapes. He might be praying. Or chanting. Or reciting something only he can hear. His hair is unwashed, matted in places. His robe clings to his thin frame, far too light for the chill. He does not look up. You begin to understand what this place is. And what it is not. This is where they send the ones who have drifted too far. The ones who scream through the night, scratching at walls. The ones who strike themselves or forget their names entirely. The friars say it is for their protection. For the safety of others. To keep darker things at bay. You move slowly down the corridor. One door at a time. One cell after another. Some are empty. Some are not. In one, a woman sits rocking back and forth, a stone pressed tenderly against her chest. She holds it as a mother might hold a child. In another, a man stands with his face to the wall, repeating a single sentence. His voice never changes pitch. Over and over he says it. Something about stars falling. Something about the sky breaking open. The friar finally speaks. His voice is low and measured. Some came as pilgrims, he says. Others were left here. Forgotten, or given over. And a few simply arrived one day and never left. Historians still argue about places like this. Whether they were built as shelters or prisons. Whether the monks who tended them were healers or wardens. The line between caring and containing was so thin it often vanished completely. And here, in this place of bolts and whispered prayers, the distinction no longer seems to matter. The friar offers you a wooden bucket filled with water and a sponge that smells faintly of thyme and vinegar. His tone is gentle, but firm. They cannot clean themselves today, he says. But dignity must be preserved. So you begin, you kneel beside the doors. You wash faces streaked with old tears. You change soiled bedding. You wipe cracked hands with damp cloths and murmur words of comfort to ears that may no longer understand language. You hum as you work. Not to soothe them. To soothe yourself, a woman grabs your wrist. Her grip is sudden, but not violent. Her eyes search yours with fierce focus. You cannot tell what she sees, only that she is looking very deeply. Then, slowly, her features soften. She smiles. Just once. And releases you. Another man, his hair white as snow, points at you with trembling fingers. His voice is shaky, filled with awe. You are St. Peter, he says. You've come to open the gates. You nod. You lie. You tell him yes. Because the truth would hurt more than the illusion. And for him, perhaps the illusion is kinder. For one brief moment, just a flicker, a thought enters your mind, perhaps this is your future. Back in your room that night, you do not lie on the bed. You sit cross-legged on the cold stone floor, your hands resting quietly in your lap. You try to pray. You try to reach for words that once brought meaning. But they do not come. Your mind is too full. Every time you close your eyes, you see theirs. The people behind the bolts. Eyes filled with fire. Eyes hollow as caves. Eyes that have seen too much, or too little, and then you ask yourself a question that scares you more than the silence ever could. Which kind of eyes do you have? The days begin to pass. One by one. You are not sent down again. Not yet. But the thought hangs in the air like smoke that will not clear. It trails behind you in the corridors. It lingers at the edges of your sleep. You know now what is possible. What is waiting. That one day, someone might decide your silence is no longer a sign of peace. That your dreams are no longer harmless. That your sadness is no longer acceptable, and then, they might send you to the place where the cries are softened by thick walls. Thomas seems quieter these days. His familiar tapping has stopped altogether. His fingers now rest motionless in his lap. Roderick still counts his steps. But only under his breath, barely audible. Beatrice no longer speaks to the invisible child. She simply hums now. A soft, wordless lullaby, over and over. The friars call this progress. They call it calm, you call it something else. That evening, you sit alone in your cell, the candle flickering in front of you. Its flame dances like a spirit caught in wind. You watch it bend and straighten, and wonder what happens to the ones who never leave the quiet cloister. Are they remembered? Are their names written anywhere? Do their families ask about them? Or do they fade, bit by bit, into the stone, and then a darker thought takes hold? What does it say about the world you live in that those who need the most comfort, the most warmth, the most light, are the ones kept farthest from it? You close your eyes, not to sleep, only to disappear for a while. Somewhere, far off, in the distance, a hum begins. Faint and slow. Familiar, and without thinking, without planning, you hum back. You are roused at dawn, not by the usual clang of bells echoing through stone corridors, but by something softer and stranger. Whispers. Urgent ones. Carried on hushed footsteps and rustling robes, voices moving swiftly past your door. You strain to hear, catching only fragments, syllables swallowed by worry. One word repeats itself more than any other, over and over like a drumbeat pressed through cloth. Which, you sit up slowly. Your back protests. Your arms ache. The cold has settled into your bones like an old tenant unwilling to leave. The dreams from the night before linger, frayed and frenzied, their meaning already dissolving. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, feet landing on stone that feels colder than usual. Not just physically cold, but cold in spirit. The air is different. The corridor outside smells faintly of tallow smoke, but also of something sharper, more metallic, more urgent. Maybe fear. By midday, the shape of the day begins to form. They bring in a girl. She is young, barely older than Beatrice, though thinner and more ragged, her frame swallowed in an oversized tunic that hangs from her like drapery on a forgotten statue. Her feet are bare and scratched, her heels caked in mud, her ankles marked by small cuts. She shivers, despite the warmth of the late summer sun. Her face is smudged with soot, and one eye is swollen, purpling at the edge. Her hair hangs in a wild tangle, matted and coarse like bramble thorns. She does not speak. She does not cry. She does not resist. She only stares, her eyes fixed somewhere beyond this place, beyond this day. She spoke to birds. One of the friars murmurs, almost reverently, almost fearfully. And danced at the crossroads. You say nothing. Silence is safer here. But Beatrice, seated near the window with her invisible child curled protectively in her arms, suddenly looks up. Her voice is clear, even. Birds are just birds, she says. Unless you're afraid of listening. The friar pretends not to hear her. Or chooses not to respond. They place the girl in a cell apart from the others, down the narrow hallway that curves near the laundry room, the one with the door that creaks but never fully shuts. They double-bolt it. No visits from the herbalist. No whispered scripture. No soft songs or warm tea. Just the sound of keys turning and then nothing. She is kept in silence, in the company of her own breath and the rustle of straw. The rumors come quickly. They always do. Here, stories sprout like weeds, impossible to pull without cutting the root. That she soured the midwife's milk with a curse. That she turned a pig inside out with a single glance. That her voice could summon storms. That she walks backward in her sleep and speaks fluently to the dead. The stories contradict each other, but no one cares. No one wants truth. They want certainty, and fear gives it freely, but you know the look in the girl's eyes. You recognize it. It is not magic. It is not madness, it is loneliness, it is the look of someone who has been too alone for too long. Who has spoken to the wind because there was no one else to answer. Who has learned to treat shadows like siblings, and silence like lullabies. This is not a witch. This is a girl made wild by hunger and disregard. But nuance is no friend to this place. You hear the word trial that evening, not a proper trial. Not one with evidence or witnesses or pleas. A test. A proving. A ritual wrapped in righteousness. At dawn, they bring her out into the courtyard. She blinks slowly, unused to the sun, her body listing slightly as though unsure whether to collapse or stand. The crowd has already gathered. Monks in their robes. Novices with nervous hands. Townsfolk standing further back, their curiosity barely hidden beneath their scarves. The friars begin to argue, low and urgent. About methods. The water trial is mentioned first. Tie her wrists and throw her into the river. If she floats, the devil holds her up and she is guilty. If she sinks, she is innocent, but drowned. A perfect test in the eyes of those who fear doubt more than death. Then someone suggests the needle. The long pin. Poke her skin, searching for the devil's mark. A place that feels nothing, bleeds nothing. A mole, a birthmark, a scar from childhood, all could be rebranded as proof of her pact. Historians still debate whether such tests were truly believed, or simply performed. Whether they were meant to reveal truth, or maintain control. Whether the people in charge ever cared which it was. In the end, none of it matters to her. The girl does not speak. She does not struggle. She simply looks ahead, her eyes fixed on something only she can see. You find yourself thinking, she could be Beatrice. Or you. Or anyone who once said something strange and never took it back. Anyone who wandered too far into their own head and didn't return with the right answers. They decide against the tests. No water. No needle. Instead, they pronounce observation. A cold decree. She is to remain alone. No food unless permitted. No touch. No speech. No one is to enter without order. They wait. They watch. They listen, hoping the devil might make himself known. You pass her cell sometimes. Her body is curled in the corner like a small animal in tall grass. She speaks in murmurs to the straw beneath her. Her lips are dry. Her face unreadable. You wonder what is worse, to be feared, or to be forgotten entirely. Beatrice begins to pace again. She cradles her child more tightly, the invisible bundle now a shield. She's not cursed, she mutters. She's tired. Just tired in the soul. One night, you leave a crust of bread outside the girl's door. In the morning, it is gone. The friars shake their heads. Rats, they say, shrugging. That week, a storm rolls in. The wind howls like it remembers something. Thunder cracks like splitting wood. The shutters rattle in their frames. Candles flicker out, snuffed by drafts no one can find. In her cell, the girl sings. A slow song. Repeating phrases in a language no one recognizes. Or perhaps they recognize it and pretend they do not. Her voice carries through the corridor, soft but unwavering. Thomas listens from the end of the hallway. His eyes wide. His hands trembling. It's not witchcraft, he says. It's a lullaby. But in a place like this, poetry can be dangerous. In a place like this, beauty is suspect. In a place like this, the line between a blessing and a curse is no thicker than candle smoke. By the end of the week, she is gone. No one explains. No one asks. You are told she was moved. Moved where? No one says. Moved why? No one answers. Her cell is empty. Her straw is swept. Her presence erased with an efficiency that stings more than it soothes. Roderick does not sleep for 2 nights. He lies awake staring at the ceiling, his mouth silently counting things that are no longer there. Beatrice weeps without speaking. You try to offer comfort, but she turns away. You find a scrap of rosemary and place it where the girl's blanket used to rest. A gesture without hope. But you leave it anyway. That night, you lie awake, you think about the girl, and then you think about yourself. What would it take, really, for someone to call you a witch? A dream you cannot explain. A sentence that arrives too slowly. A question asked at the wrong time. A silence held a second too long. You begin to understand something terrible. Here, madness is not the only crime, mystery is. Confusion is. Being too strange. Too quiet. Too unlike the others. Failing to fit into the shapes the world wants. Failing to smile when expected. Failing to speak in proper metaphors. The mind, when it refuses to be tamed, becomes a threat. Not because of what it might do, but because of what it reminds people of, and in the wrong light, any soul that limps or aches or sings in an unfamiliar tune can look like a spell. The bells ring out in frantic triple pulses, sharp and jarring, slicing through the dawn air like a blade through linen. It is not the usual rhythm, not the familiar cadence that marks prayer, or mealtime, or the slow procession of hours in this cloistered place. This one is different. Harsher. Urgent. It rings with purpose, with warning. Something, or someone, has arrived. From your window, you see it. A carriage, dark and polished, glistening with streaks of mud left by the previous night's storm, rolls into the monastery courtyard with the kind of presence that demands silence. Its wheels creak slightly, weighted with more than passengers. The wooden panels are carved with unfamiliar crests. Symbols of lineage that mean nothing to you but everything to those who care about such things. The horses, restless and slick with sweat, paw at the wet stone. From the carriage steps a man. He is cloaked in velvet, the deep red of dried blood, and wrapped in an air that feels more dangerous than the sword at his hip. His face is pale but proud, chin held high, mouth tight. His eyes sweep across the courtyard like a lord surveying his holdings. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. Behind him trail attendants, each clad in somber livery, their faces drawn tight with effort or unease. And behind them comes the boy. He is small. Thin. Pale in a way that looks like it began in the bone. His hair clings damply to his forehead. He is barefoot, the soles of his feet dark with soil, though the rain has washed most of it away. A heavy cloak hangs from his shoulders, far too large for him, the hem dragging behind like the train of a forgotten prince. His expression is blank, not from innocence but from absence. This is not a visit of goodwill. No one speaks of hope. No one smiles. There are no gifts. Only quiet footsteps, stiff backs, and the tightening of shoulders. The whispers begin before the carriage door is even shut. He is the son of a prince, someone says. A bastard, perhaps. Or perhaps legitimate, but inconvenient. There is no official word. But what is certain, what travels from mouth to ear with the speed of fire, is that the boy is unwell. He has been seen speaking to his reflection, laughing at funerals, throwing stones at shadows, reciting riddles at dawn. And so, they say, he has been brought here. Not for comfort. Not even truly for care. He has been brought for something else entirely, containment. The friars bow deeply as the nobleman passes. Deeper still as he departs without looking back. He does not say a word to the boy. Does not touch his hand. Does not meet his eyes. The child is left behind like a satchel. A burden lightened. They lead him to the east wing, a quiet place once reserved for passing pilgrims. The door clicks shut behind him. You hear the lock slide home. The next day, you see him in the garden, flanked by 2 guards. He walks slowly, not because he is weak, but because the act of movement seems unfamiliar. His eyes tilt upward, fixed on the sky, watching something unseen. His lips move without sound. He could be praying, but the rhythm is strange. It feels more like he is counting the clouds. Or arguing with them. He says nothing to anyone. Not for 1 day. Not for 2. Not for 3, but on the 4th, he appears beside you in the dining hall. He sits without asking, folding his small frame neatly on the bench next to yours. No one stops him. No one seems to have told him that he should not. He does not eat. He only watches. Watches your spoon move from bowl to mouth. Watches the scrape of wood against wood. Finally, in a voice quiet but deliberate, he speaks. They said I'm broken inside, he tells you. You pause. Then you nod. Slowly. Gently, I think, he adds, I'm just thinking too loudly. And in that moment, you understand him completely. Illness of the mind, you have learned, does not spare kings. It does not discriminate by title or lineage. Monarchs weep in silence. Princes panic in locked rooms. Lords crumble beneath silk robes. Madness, or whatever name the world chooses to call it, does not care about bloodlines. But how others respond, that is a different matter entirely. A noble is called eccentric. A peasant, cursed. A woman, possessed. A child? That becomes complicated. Dangerous. History is not short on examples. King Charles VI of France once insisted he was made of glass and feared shattering. Henry VI of England suffered spells of unresponsiveness so deep they called him a ghost. Royalty whispered to saints. And sometimes, to ceilings. And when they did, it was not dismissed. It was noted. Documented. Feared. For when a noble mind falters, the kingdom feels the tremor. Historians still debate what was real and what was fiction, whether breakdowns were concealed for protection or broadcast for politics. But the pattern always reveals itself. Power delays punishment. It wraps strangeness in velvet. Until it becomes too inconvenient to ignore, you see the boy tearing petals from a flower, separating each one into perfect halves. His hands are slow, methodical. They don't like it when I sing at night, he whispers, not looking up. Even if the moon asks me to. You nod again. Because what else can you say? Later that evening, you overhear 2 friars in quiet discussion. Their voices are low but tense. They do not know how to handle the boy. He cannot be chastised like a novice. He cannot be dismissed like a peasant. He is too visible. Too important. Too strange, they compromise. Rituals are arranged. Daily blessings. Additional psalms. Supervised walks through carefully pruned paths. He becomes a curiosity. A ghost in silk. A sacred puzzle no one dares to solve. It is Thomas who approaches him first. The two begin playing a quiet game in the courtyard, something involving colored stones and strange humming patterns. You never quite understand the rules. But the boy smiles, faintly, for the first time. Then Roderick joins them, offering riddles in halting verse and broken song. The boy listens. Laughs once. A soft, startled sound. Beatrice only watches, her gaze unreadable, her grip on the invisible child tighter than before. Then one morning, the boy is gone, no ceremony. No farewell. Just an empty bed in the east wing and a silence more hollow than before. The friars say he was retrieved. No explanation is given. No name is offered. No carriage is seen. But you know. You know he did not walk out. You stare at the mattress where he used to sleep. At the dent where his body curled like a question no one had time to answer. That night, you and Beatrice sit in silence. The candle between you flickers. The wax pools slowly. You do not speak. You do not need to. But after a long while, Beatrice murmurs something you barely hear. He was like the bird who sang too clearly, she says. You nod. Words feel like stones in your throat. The next morning, Roderick leaves something in the chapel alcove. A small piece of folded parchment, stained at the edges. On it, a drawing in crude lines. The boy. And beside him, a cloud with a face and a smile. It is gone by noon. Taken. Removed. Erased, but the memory lingers. The shape of it. The idea, this world does not know what to do with broken royals. Or broken anyone, really. It has no language for quiet sorrow. No patience for unpredictable minds. When a prince hears voices, they call it melancholy. When you do, they call it madness. When he sings to the moon, they wonder. When you do, they worry, and in the end, both vanish. One disappears into a carriage that no one watches leave, the other fades into a deeper kind of quiet. The kind no bells can reach. You are handed a bundle at sunrise. The friar gives it to you without expression, his eyes unreadable in the gray morning light. Inside the bundle is a crust of bread, hard enough to crack a tooth if you're not careful. A small flask of water, wrapped in waxed cloth to keep the damp away. A pair of sandals, poorly made and far too large for your feet. No words of encouragement. No gentle explanation. Just a clear and calm directive, offered as casually as one might mention the weather. You are going on pilgrimage, not by yourself, of course. That would be unthinkable. Dangerous. Unstructured solitude is considered suspect here. Instead, you are sent out with others. A slow-moving procession of figures who walk like shadows and speak like echoes. Some come from nearby villages, bundled in their cloaks and fear. Others are like you, already part of the priory. Already marked. Already watched. Every one of them branded, in one way or another, by the invisible ink of affliction. All are considered in need of divine mercy. All are pointed toward the same sacred place, the shrine of Saint Tilda the Reconciler, which lies far away, a full 300 miles down a web of uncertain roads. You do not protest. There is no point. Your throat is parched, your mouth dry as parchment. Even if you wanted to speak, the words would not come. And besides, you have learned to recognize the difference between punishment and prescription. This is not cast as retribution. This is prescribed devotion. A holy act. A curative measure. A test of faith. Because apparently, somewhere between your heel and your hip, the sadness will wear itself out, one of the friars offers you a small wooden cross, strung on a piece of coarse, fraying twine. He places it around your neck with a slight nod. Pray with every step, he tells you. And listen for God in the silence. You begin to walk. The road is unkind. Uneven. The earth beneath you alternates between dry-packed dust and slick, sucking mud. Stones rise like teeth from the ground, waiting to bruise your arches. The sandals blister your heels within the hour. The wind pulls at your thin cloak as if testing your resolve. Cold seeps in despite the season. Thomas walks ahead, humming again. A soft tune without rhythm or end. Beatrice walks beside you, eyes far off, muttering quietly to someone only she can see. Her hand opens and closes as if holding something fragile. Roderick walks behind, counting his steps aloud in groups of 7. When he stumbles or loses track, he starts over with no complaint, throughout the day. Your group swells. In small villages, families appear at crossroads to press new pilgrims into the line. Some are eager. Some cry. Some must be coaxed, or even carried. You see mothers push their sons forward, eyes bright with hope and desperation. You see sisters guiding brothers with nervous hands. Faces marked by tremors, or silence, or strange laughter. The road becomes a river of the misunderstood. You sleep that first night beneath a tree whose name you do not know. Its branches sway like slow arms above you. The ground is uneven. Your back soaks through with dew. The crust of bread is already gone. The water tastes faintly of wood and iron. You dream of places you have never been. Hills that breathe. Rivers that speak. Stairs that lead nowhere. You wake feeling more tired than before. By the 4th day, your feet are blistered and torn. The skin beneath your toes peels away in angry ribbons. Beatrice has stopped speaking entirely, her lips tight and pale. Thomas hums only a single note now, long and low, like the drone of a bee. Roderick still hums too, but his song changes every 6 steps, sometimes more often. You reach a roadside shrine. It is simple. A small mound of stones, piled with devotion and forgetfulness. A wooden carving stands at the center, worn by weather and time, the saint's face rubbed smooth by countless fingers. Ribbons are tied to the tree branches above it, fluttering like tattered prayers. A single chicken egg has been placed beneath the rocks. You kneel. Not out of belief. Not because you think it will change anything. But because your legs hurt too much to keep standing. In the medieval mind, pilgrimage was a kind of hospital of the spirit. You walked to purge yourself. You suffered to reach clarity. Each aching joint, each step, was a verse in a hymn of penance. Historians still debate whether this was sincere healing or just sacred performance. It does not matter to you. Your calves burn all the same. By the 8th day, people begin to fall away. An older woman with a twisted foot cannot go on. She is left with a piece of barley bread and a whispered blessing. A boy who shrieks in his sleep is tied gently to a tree with a note pinned to his tunic. The note says, "Deliver us." You keep walking. You pass through towns that look at you with confusion. Some offer you food and quiet words. Others spit curses. You are given apples in one place. In another, they throw rocks. You are a puzzle to them. Are you holy? Are you cursed? Are you dangerous? Are you contagious? One village refuses to let you inside its walls. You sleep in a ditch near a stream while a friar sets up a makeshift altar on a slope of grass. He preaches about pain and peace. He tells you that suffering is a bridge to divinity. You stare at the stream and wonder if drowning would be quieter. By the 3rd week, your group is half its original size. Roderick has begun to sing his rhymes backward. He giggles at strange times. Beatrice now refuses food unless it has been chewed for her first, a habit she insists is required by her child. Thomas has stopped speaking altogether. His eyes flick upward, as though waiting for wings, and then, one cold morning streaked with mist and silence, you arrive. The shrine is not what you imagined. Not gold. Not marble. Not grand. It sits nestled among trees, green with moss and shadow. The statue of Saint Tilda stands at its center, carved from stone, arms outstretched. In one hand she holds a lamb. In the other, a broken chain. They say she once whispered a single word into the ear of a screaming man and brought him to peace. You kneel before her. Not because you expect a miracle, but because your knees give out. A friar steps forward. He blesses you with water so cold it strikes your skull like a hammer. Your teeth clench from the shock. He presses something into your palm, a medallion made of tin, cheap and dented, but warm from his touch. You are heard, he tells you. Even if you do not speak. And for a flicker of time, a moment so brief it could be lost in a breath, you believe him. That night, you sleep inside the shrine, packed tightly with others. Bodies overlap like fallen books on a shelf. You use your cloak as a pillow. Your body is wedged between Thomas and a woman who mutters psalms into the darkness. You sleep hard. You dream of broken chains melting into water. Of lambs leaping through clouds. Of a voice you have never heard before, saying something gentle and kind in the quiet. When you wake, your body aches, but your eyes remain soft. The road stretches ahead of you again, waiting, because that is the part they never say aloud. Pilgrimage does not end at the shrine. It never did. It ends when you find your way back to yourself, and the truth is, you do not yet know the way, not yet. You are back at the monastery now, barely. Your legs carry you, but only just. They feel thinner, looser at the joints, like they forgot how to belong to a body. Your skin has changed. It is darker in some places where the sun struck too long, redder in others where blisters burst and healed without care. The cloak they once gave you hangs in tatters, more holes than fabric. The sandals are little more than strings and sole fragments, holding on by habit. The pilgrimage took its payment in full. But somehow, you are here. You returned. Not healed, not transformed, but different in a way you cannot yet explain. The friars greet you without fanfare. There is no ceremony for return. No choir. No bell to announce your arrival. One friar nods. Another scribbles your name into a book. That is all. They ask a few questions in hushed tones. Do you feel better? Do you still hear the voices? Do you remember your name? Then, they give you a simple blessing, spoken quickly in Latin, the words sliding over your shoulders like rain on stone. You are led back to your same cot, the same corner of your cell, where the stone walls seem smaller now, somehow closer than before, as if they have been watching you from afar and are now relieved to enclose you again. But something is different. There is a new plan. The friars have decided to bring you to the relics, not just any relics. Not the kind displayed in traveling boxes or mentioned in passing during sermons. These are the relics, the most sacred possessions in the monastery's keeping. The bones of Saint Odrin the Steadfast, the revered healer and confessor, entombed beneath the chapel floor in a sealed chamber rarely opened. They say only the most deeply afflicted are allowed near them. That only the ones whose souls tremble without rest are invited to kneel before the saint's remains. Apparently, after 3 weeks of walking and still returning with that blank look in your eyes, you qualify. They do not send you as you are. First, you are bathed. It is not gentle. 2 novices scrub your body with cloths so coarse they could polish metal. They clean your nails with slivers of horn, scrape dirt from your heels with blunt knives, and pour cold water over your scalp until your teeth clack. You are given a fresh robe, stiff and smelling faintly of ash. Then you are left to wait. When the bell rings, it is not the familiar sound you have learned to expect. It is deeper, a low tone struck 3 times, slowly. Each note lingers in the stone halls like smoke. It is the signal that something sacred is about to unfold. You are led down by torchlight, the steps descend beneath the chapel. Narrow and worn, lined with candles that flicker against damp walls streaked with centuries of wax and shadow. The air thickens with every step, heavy with the scent of old incense and something older still. You breathe as though through cloth. The silence is complete, broken only by your footsteps and the slow creak of your own bones. You are not alone, Beatrice is with you. She hasn't blinked in a day. Her eyes stay open, dry and unflinching, as if afraid they might see something if they close. Roderick walks just behind, whispering the Ave Maria in reverse, syllables spilling out of his mouth like puzzle pieces. A woman named Lise walks beside you. She is new, arrived only last week. No one knows her story yet. Her hair is braided with twigs. Her silence is absolute, the chamber is smaller than you expected. It is carved from stone, shaped like a circle, lit only by oil lamps that give off a golden haze. At the center stands a low marble slab. Upon it, a glass case, edges clouded with age. Inside rests what might be a femur, wrapped in faded silk embroidered with a saint's name in letters worn to thread. Beside it, a golden bowl holds a pale powder, perhaps salt, or bone dust, or some mixture of the two. A friar steps forward. His robes shimmer faintly in the lamplight, but his eyes remain hidden beneath the shadow of his hood. He begins to chant. The sound is low and steady, less like a melody and more like a heartbeat turned to words. You are told to kneel. You are told to place your forehead against the slab. You are told to whisper your affliction into the stone, as if the dead might listen more carefully than the living. You do what you are told. You whisper, I don't know who I am anymore. The marble is cold. It does not reply. It does not warm. The friar presses the bowl of dust against your chest. He does not shove it. But the pressure is strong, certain, as though the relic must leave a mark to be believed. The dust clings to your skin, gritty and dry. It smells of old prayers and something more personal, like forgotten memories burned down to ash. The friar mutters about sanctity. About purity. About the way light drives darkness from the soul. You wait for a feeling, but there is nothing, not peace. Not fear. Not revelation. Just emptiness. A clean, echoing kind. As if your body is too tired, too worn to be moved. As if it used all its fire on the road and left only the shell behind. In medieval belief, relics were anchors. Pieces of the divine tethered to this world. A fragment of bone. A shred of cloth. A drop of blood on a square of linen. These were thought to carry healing. Insight, protection. They were said to spark visions. Some called them miracles. But scholars still debate whether their power came from the relics themselves or from the hopes that people poured into them like water into cracked bowls. You are no longer certain what you believe. Beatrice collapses during her turn. Not dramatically. Not loudly. She simply folds in on herself like parchment curling under heat. They call it release. No one helps her up. Roderick begins to sing louder. His voice wavers, but his eyes stay shut. Lise does not move. Her fingers twitch, but her face remains still. Later, they wipe the dust from your chest with a damp cloth. The touch is gentler now. Almost kind. You are given a small bowl of honeyed oats. A luxury, compared to the usual fare. The sweetness surprises your tongue, then they return you to your cell. No words are spoken. As if what occurred in the chamber needs no interpretation. As if you should already know what it meant, you lie on your cot for hours. Your hands stay folded, not in prayer, but in quiet defense. They rest over your stomach, knotted as if shielding something that might spill out. The wind hums through the high arches above, whistling like a voice without language. That night, your dreams arrive all at once. You find yourself walking through a dense forest, thick with fog and pine. Every tree bears an image of yourself. Not pictures. Not carvings. Living reflections. Some versions of you laugh. Others scream. One dances. One sleeps. You stop before a tree where your image weeps. You reach toward it, wanting to comfort or connect. Your hand passes through its body like smoke, like memory, like something already fading. You wake shivering. There is no miracle waiting. No thunderclap of insight. Only the quiet certainty that something inside you has shifted, just slightly, to the left. The next day, the friars speak to you in softer tones. They glance at you with eyes that seem to hold approval. Or hope, or perhaps just relief. They say the relics have touched your spirit. That your silence now hums with grace. You nod, because they need you to nod. Later, in the garden, Thomas finds you near the rosemary bushes. He plucks at a stem but does not speak at first. Then, without looking at you, he asks, "What did it feel like?" You think for a moment. You answer truthfully, "Dusty." He laughs. Not loud. Not cruel. Just a small laugh. The kind that settles in your ribs and says, quietly, "Same." They have sent for the physician again, not the kindly herbalist who whispers over moss-steeped teas and ties sprigs of lavender with thread too soft to notice. Not the monk who moves through incense smoke like he's auditioning for sainthood, sighing as if the weight of the world clings to every syllable of Latin he chants. Not them, no. Him, the physician with the eyes like scalpel blades. The one who looks at you too directly, too deliberately, as if your pain is something he might crack open and examine like a walnut. The one who never smiles, and when he does, it feels like a miscalculation. The one whose robe never wrinkles, whose fingernails are too clean, whose breath smells faintly of vinegar and something worse. Certainty. He arrives just after the morning meal, when the taste of barley still lingers in your teeth and the warmth of porridge has barely reached your bones. He comes flanked by two assistants, both young, both wide-eyed, both wearing expressions that belong more to theater than to medicine. One carries a stack of scrolls tied with ribbon, already unrolling them as he walks, the corners dragging against the stone floor. The other bears a wooden case, narrow and long, and it rattles with every step he takes. The sound is like teeth chattering on iron. You do not look at it. You know better than to look. You are brought to the examination room. It is not the one with the leach jars. Thankfully. This one is quieter. But it is worse. There is a chair at the center. A tall-backed thing, made of dark wood, heavy and carved with symbols too old to understand. The arms are fitted with leather straps, two for the wrists, one across the chest, another at the ankles. They do not use the straps. Not today. But they leave them visible. Not buckled, not hidden. A suggestion. A reminder. The physician gestures toward the seat. His voice is clipped, brisk, and offers no opportunity for refusal. "Sit," he says, "so you sit." He begins, as they all do, with questions. The kind that wear false gentleness, as though concern might excuse intrusion. "Do you hear voices that are not your own?" He asks. "Have you seen visions recently? Do you communicate with the dead?" You answer as plainly as possible. No, no, and only if they start the conversation. The corner of his mouth twitches. Not a smile. Just an adjustment. He does not laugh. Then come the tests. The physical ones. He taps beneath your knees with a rod of polished bone. Listens to the echo in your joints as if they hold secrets. He leans close, uncomfortably close, and peers into your eyes, one after the other, searching for tremors in the pupil. Searching for something to name. He places his fingers along your temples, presses them gently, then not so gently. He produces a pair of calipers from his assistant's case and measures the width of your forehead, the angle of your jaw, the distance between the hollows beneath your eyes. As he works, he hums. Not a song. More of a tone, a single note repeated between breaths. It settles into your spine like a warning. He jots down phrases in Latin, his handwriting sharp and angular. You catch glimpses, temperamentum phlegmaticum, spiritus motus, vibrations obscuri. Words that might mean anything. Or nothing. He examines your fingernails, one by one, as though the truth of your soul might be hidden in the crescents. He makes you open your mouth. He inspects your tongue like it is a sacrament gone wrong. He finds your wrist and counts your pulse aloud, tapping time with his other hand on the edge of the chair. Then, as if none of that had yielded enough, he pulls out a chart, astrology. He asks for your date of birth. Then your time. You do not remember the exact hour, so he guesses. He mutters to himself as he traces circles and lines on the parchment, dragging a quill through imaginary constellations. Mars in decline, he mumbles. Saturn rising through the fifth. Unfortunate. Dangerous. You nod, the way you do when someone tells you about a dream you do not care to understand. He says your mind may be troubled because the moon was in a bad place when you entered the world. That your blood is too cold, your bile too slow. That your melancholic disposition has roots in planetary moods. He pauses, turns back to you. Have you dreamed of water? He asks. Or recurring visions of birds? Teeth? Fire? You consider this. Last week, you dreamed of a crow engulfed in flame, and when it turned to look at you, it had your grandmother's face. But that feels like a private thing. So you say nothing. The physician leans back. His fingers press together at the tips, forming a steeple. He looks satisfied, or as close to satisfied as someone like him gets. There is a blockage, he announces. In your humors. A disturbance. But I suspect the problem began before you were born. And there it is, the turning point. The inevitable conclusion. The mother, it is practically scripture among men like him. If a person suffers, the cause must lie in the womb. Perhaps your mother ate too many figs. Or read the wrong psalm on the wrong day. Maybe she was startled by a goat. Or laughed too loudly during Lent. Maybe she did nothing at all, except carry you in her body, and for that, she must be responsible. Some historians believe physicians truly thought this way. Others think it was simply the easiest answer. When bile and demons failed to account for madness, mothers were always convenient. He prescribes a treatment. A regimen. Cold baths, to cool the blood. Long, loud psalms to frighten the spirits into fleeing. No meat after sundown, for reasons he does not explain. A boiled root soaked in vinegar, to be tucked under your tongue during evening prayers. And, of course, another bloodletting. Just to be certain, he says, almost cheerfully. You ask, very calmly, if the root is supposed to help with nightmares. He narrows his eyes. What nightmares? He replies, you nod. Exactly. As you rise from the chair, gathering the loose folds of your robe, he pauses. Reaches into his satchel and produces something small and smooth. A stone. Oval-shaped, polished to a dull shine. The color of rain clouds before a storm, for grounding, he says. Keep it in your left shoe. You stare at it, then at him, then at the floor. You place it in your pocket. Not out of belief. But because you are tired. And it is something to carry that is not invisible. Later, you return to the courtyard. The sun hangs low. The shadows of the cloister arches stretch long and bent across the stones. Beatrice sits beneath one, weaving invisible threads between her fingers, whispering lullabies to no one. Roderick has arranged pebbles in a complicated spiral and is muttering about royal bloodlines and succession rights. Thomas sings softly to a snail crawling along the wall. You sit beside them, you tell them about the physician. Beatrice gasps with the kind of dramatic flair that only she can make feel sincere. Did he find your humors? She asks, eyes wide. Mostly, you reply, nodding. But one of them was hiding behind my spleen. She nods back with grave seriousness, as if this diagnosis makes complete sense. Roderick picks up a small, warm pebble and places it in your palm. Put this one in your other shoe, he says. You need balance. You tuck it into your robe, just in case. That night, you lie awake. The room is quiet. The ceiling is darker than usual. You keep your shoes on. The stone presses gently against your ankle, not painful, not pleasant. Just present. And somehow, it helps. Not because you think it is magical. Not because it hums with healing, but because it is yours, not something given by a friar. Not commanded in Latin. Not scribbled in a diagnosis. Just a small, solid piece of the world that you chose to carry, and maybe, just maybe, that is what healing looks like, not a cure. Not a spell, but a quiet decision made when everything else was chosen for you. The friars are whispering again, their voices are low, careful, cautious. The kind of whispering that carries further because of how tightly it's held. But this time, their words have nothing to do with relics glowing in the candlelight, or wayward patients muttering beneath breath, or even prayers. The things they whisper now are different. Heavier. Less holy. They're talking about Bedlam. Formally, it is known as the Hospital of St. Mary of Bethlehem. That is its proper title. Its given name. But no one uses it anymore. Not the friars. Not the villagers. Not even the royal court that funds it in part and fears it in full. Instead, they call it Bedlam. A word that clatters out of the mouth like a stone tossed down a stairwell. A word that sounds like chaos even if you don't know what it means. A warning disguised as a name. You weren't meant to hear it. You were walking past the chapel, quietly, carefully, your hands wrapped around a bowl of lentil stew that smelled faintly of thyme and overboiled sadness. You didn't ask for it. It was placed in your hands before you could protest, and now it was yours. Just another thing to carry. As you passed, a voice slipped from the shadows inside the chapel. A friar's voice. Measured, clipped. Almost bored. The ones who don't respond after relics, he said. Bedlam is the last resort. You did not drop the bowl, but the weight of it changed. Bedlam is not known for healing. It is not a place where people go to get better. It is a place where people are placed. As in, placed somewhere out of sight. Placed where they can no longer wander the halls or disturb the order of cloisters or remind others of the fragile walls between order and collapse. It is not a sanctuary. It is storage. They say it began as a hospital. Once. A place of mercy. A place of care. But over time, something shifted. Walls thickened. Doors locked from the outside. It became a spectacle. A cage with a steeple. A warning wrapped in architecture. You try not to think about it. Try to let the memory of the overheard words dissolve into the broth of the stew. But memory is sticky, and the thought clings. Then, days later, it happens. A cart arrives, not grand. Not gilded. Just a plain wooden cart with high sides and thick wheels. The kind used for hauling barrels or hay. Or, in this case, people. It is not for you, it is for Lise. She has not spoken since the second week of her stay. The twigs braided into her hair were gently removed several days ago, replaced with a pale linen cap that refuses to sit properly on her head, always asks you as if resisting the notion of order. She eats when food is placed in front of her. She drinks water when reminded. She sometimes smiles at candles as though they are old friends. But she does not scream. She does not struggle. She simply exists at a pace all her own. The friars say she is not improving, so, they decide, and so, they place her in the cart, not with cruelty. Not with spectacle. No shouting. No struggle. Just hands beneath her arms. A soft murmur. A guiding step. Procedural, like sweeping the floors or trimming the herbs. Just another task, she is led through the hallway in silence. Her footsteps soft. Her eyes half-lidded. Beatrice moves to follow her, one step, maybe two, but is gently stopped beneath the stone archway. Thomas taps the wall 3 times, then stops altogether. As if the pattern has lost its meaning. Roderick does not look up. He rearranges his pebbles without expression. You remain where you are, still. You don't move because you can't. You do not know how. That night, when the halls have fallen into quiet and the candles have burned low, you lie in your cot and stare upward at the ceiling you know too well. Your eyes trace the invisible patterns in the stone. Your thoughts refuse to settle. You try to picture what Bedlam looks like. What it might feel like to be there. You have never seen it, but you've heard enough. Narrow corridors, barely wide enough to turn in. Iron rings hammered into walls. Straw beds soaked through and never changed. Cold that seeps into the bones and never leaves. But the worst part is not the place itself, it is the people who come to see it, not friends. Not loved ones. Spectators, you've heard the stories. Coins exchanged at the entrance. Visitors led through the wards like sheep in a market. They walk slowly. Eyes wide. Pointing. Laughing. Whispering. Watching the lunatics perform their sorrow like actors in a play they never agreed to join. They watch people rage. They watch people sob. They watch people curl up and vanish into corners. Historians still argue about the truth of those tours. Whether they were daily or rare, official or forbidden. But there is no debate about the feeling of the place. That much is certain. Bedlam was not built for comfort. It was not built for recovery. It was built to contain, and now Lise is there. You wonder if she knew. If she felt the shift in the air. If she noticed the way the friars stopped asking her questions. If she saw the cart waiting and understood what it meant. You wonder if, in some small way, she agreed to it. The next morning, a friar places a hand on your shoulder and says, very gently, sometimes people need structure. You look at him for a long moment. Say nothing. Think about the word, structure. You think about the leather straps on the physician's chair. About the gate that closes the quiet cloister. About the women inside who haven't stepped into sunlight in weeks. About the rules that stack on top of rules until they crush the ones they were meant to help. Structure, right. That afternoon, Beatrice takes a piece of broken slate and a stub of charcoal from the bottom of her satchel. She draws a cart with outstretched wings. A girl inside, smiling, as if the wheels have lifted from the earth. She tapes the drawing to the chapel door with wax from a candle stub when no one is watching. By evening, it is gone, removed. Discarded. Forgotten, but the image stays with you. A winged cart. A quiet smile. Not because you think it is real. Not because you believe in flying carts or charcoal miracles. But because it is better than picturing what actually happened. The days that follow move slowly, the air shifts. Quieter. Thicker. The weather turns. Mist rolls in with the mornings and clings to your skin like doubt that will not lift. You walk the length of the cloister walkways. You trace the stones with your fingertips. You listen to the monks chant and try to forget, but bedlam lingers, it becomes a whisper. A threat. A silent answer to questions no one wants to ask aloud. One friar even says it clearly when Thomas refuses to kneel during prayer. His voice sharp, angry. Do you want to end up in bedlam? He hisses, and Thomas, in a rare flash of lucidity, smiles like he's sharing a secret. He says, would they have birds? You almost laugh, you catch yourself just in time, because laughter means you are fine. Laughter means you are still inside the circle. Still inside the walls. Still counted, and that night, with the candles long extinguished, you press your ear to the cold stone wall and close your eyes. You imagine Lise is singing. A soft, lilting sound. Something old and soothing, you know it is impossible, she is miles away, but you listen anyway. Because sometimes, pretending is the only structure you have left. You hear laughter today, not the frightened kind that bursts out like a broken pipe, sharp and unexpected. Not the choked sort that catches in the throat, uncertain whether it's joy or despair. Not the hollow giggle that tries to pass for cheer but rings false in the stillness. Not that. This is different. This is the kind that rises slow and deep, like a warm tide pulled from someplace long locked away. The kind that ripples through the body before escaping through the mouth, startling even the one who makes it. It is full. Rich. Alive, you freeze, not out of fear, but because something inside you still does not know what to do when joy appears. Especially not here. Especially not like this. It cuts through the silence of the monastery like a crack of sunlight in a shuttered room. Sharp. Bright. Real. You stand there, suspended in the stillness that follows, as if the world is holding its breath to listen again. It's coming from the garden. You step outside, hesitant. The way you might step into a dream you do not want to wake from. The brightness hits you first. The sun is out, blazing without apology. It floods the cloisters in gold, warming the stones that are usually gray and cold to the touch. You blink, adjusting. The brightness feels like noise. But beneath it, you hear it again, laughter, not just one voice now, but several. Layered. Echoing off the courtyard walls. It rises and falls, a tide of something warm and strange. You follow the sound, drawn like a needle to a magnet. When you reach the fountain, you see them. A gathering. A cluster of the familiar few, bound together not by illness, not by silence, but by something else today. By delight, at the center of it all is Thomas. He sits like a monarch on the fountain's edge, moss framing him like a velvet cushion. His arms are flung wide. His voice rings out with theatrical flourish. His expression is one of deep seriousness, which only makes the absurdity more delightful. He is performing. And the audience? Rapt. Captivated. Transformed, he is reciting poetry, and not the beautiful kind, no. It is awful. Dreadfully tangled, hilariously clumsy, filled with forced rhymes and awkward phrasing. But that hardly matters. Because the words, bad as they are alive. He gives them life. He delivers each line as though it were scripture, as though every absurd stanza deserves reverence. One moment he is a nobleman. Mustache smeared across his lip with soot, hand over heart, proclaiming love to a passing breeze. The next, he crouches low, transforms into a crow, feathers imagined but movements precise, offering romantic counsel in a cawing dialect that has Beatrice doubled over. She clutches at the air in front of her chest, where her invisible child must surely rest. She gasps with laughter, trying not to let go of her illusion or her balance. Her whole face brightens, like a window thrown open after years of dust. Her joy is so pure, so unguarded, that for a moment, you feel your own rising to meet it. Roderick, ever devoted to small details, has arranged a royal audience from pebbles and tufts of weed. They are seated around the base of the fountain in careful rows, heads bowed as if in awe. Each time Thomas ends a stanza, Roderick stands and bows low, his movements slow and reverent, as though he were the master of ceremonies in a grand court, and you laugh too, it bubbles up before you know it is there. An unpracticed sound, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. It bursts out of you like a sneeze, catching you off guard, then settling in your chest with a strange warmth. The others do not notice, or if they do not comment. They are too busy laughing themselves. The stone beneath you is hard, but you sit anyway. The garden feels different today. Less like a place you are kept and more like a place you have found. The air smells of sun-warmed dirt and crushed rosemary. The leaves flutter above like applause. You settle in as Thomas unsheathes an imaginary sword, which turns out to be a daffodil pulled gently from the grass. He challenges an invisible foe. He parries and spins and lunges with a flourish so dramatic that even the flower seems to blush, giving up a petal in surrender. You smile, more fully now. Two friars pass by. One spares only a glance, his face unreadable, before moving on. The other lingers a moment longer, eyes narrowed, as if unsure what to make of the scene. But he, too, walks on in silence. Perhaps they are pleased you are out of your room. Or perhaps they are tired. Tired of silence in corridors that echo too loudly. Tired of prayers that never seem to reach the ears of saints. Tired of pretending that order alone can save the human spirit. Maybe, like you, they sense that something here is blooming. Historians tend to miss this part. They write about the institution. About bedlam and relics. About exorcisms and isolation and darkened chambers. About prayers muttered over trembling bodies and saints invoked like spells. But they forget to mention what happens when madness laughs. Not to mock. Not to escape. But to live, because it does. Madness does not always mean howling. It does not always mean tears or torment. Sometimes it plays. Sometimes it wears a crown made of twigs and daisy chains. Sometimes it makes finger puppets from shadows and gives sermons about clouds shaped like camels. Sometimes it tells stories, not to be believed, but to be heard, and sometimes, those who are most shattered become the ones who help others hold their pieces together. In the evenings now, Thomas holds what he calls court. You all gather around him at the edge of the courtyard. The sun fades behind the walls, casting long, gold-tinged shadows. The air cools. The fire is lit. You wrap yourselves in threadbare cloaks, their scent a mixture of wool, smoke, and rain. Thomas stands in the center. He does not read from a book. He does not pause to collect his thoughts. He simply begins. Stories pour from him like water from a spring. There are fish who sing opera beneath the river. There are goats with wings who deliver secrets to the moon. There is a queen made of spoons who hosts royal feasts beneath the roots of a cedar tree. The stories contradict themselves. They make no logical sense. But they are warm. They are alive. They pulse with something truer than facts, and that truth weaves into each of you like thread. Soon, Beatrice adds her voice. Her stories are quieter. She tells of a child who lives inside a bell. A child who cannot leave until someone strikes the exact note of their name. Her voice is soft, barely above a whisper. You lean in to catch every word. Roderick contributes his rhymes. Strange, crooked things that sound like riddles and lullabies had a child. They wobble like his towers, but never collapse. You do not speak. Not yet. You simply listen, and that listening feels like medicine. One night, Thomas tells a new story. It catches you before you can prepare. It is about a boy. A boy who hears the thoughts of plants. A boy who dances each morning with the rising sun. A boy who is sent away to a tower for being too strange, too joyful, too much. But the boy does not stop dancing. Not even in the silence of stone. And one day, the tower laughs. And it laughs so hard, it cracks. No one speaks when he finishes, he offers no explanation. No meaning. He simply bows. The silence that follows is not awkward. It is reverent. Beatrice claps. Once. Then again. Gentle, as though the story might vanish if applauded too loudly, and you understand something. No one here believes they are being healed in the way the friars mean. No one expects to be called cured. But the stories, the laughter, the shared silence and madness and nonsense, these are not signs of illness, they are signs of life, they are resistance, they are how you all refuse to be flattened. How you remain visible, not as diagnoses, but as people. Whole people. Strange and beautiful and whole. These moments are not delusions. They are defenses. Against shame. Against invisibility. Against forgetting yourselves. One day, a friar joins your circle. He is young. New. His hands shake a little as he steps forward. He asks if he can sit. Thomas welcomes him without pause. He plucks a thistle from the garden and presents it as if it were a medal of honor. Knight of the South Courtyard, he announces. The friar laughs. It is awkward. It is too loud. It comes out like a cough, startled and surprised. You do not trust it, but then again, maybe this isn't about trust. Maybe it's about joining. About choosing to share a story even if you don't yet understand the language. That night, when you return to your room, something waits for you, a leaf, folded, placed just beneath your blanket. You open it slowly. Inside, written in smudged charcoal, are 5 simple words: we're not broken. Just misheard. You read it once. Then again. And then again. You do not know who left it. Beatrice, perhaps. Or Thomas. Or Roderick. Maybe even the new friar, fumbling his way toward understanding. You fold it gently and slide it into your sleeve, where it rests against the skin of your wrist, close to your pulse, and in this strange, gentle place, that feels like healing too. You've been called gifted. Not by the friars, of course. The friars still cling to their familiar vocabulary, those carefully curated words that fall somewhere between pity and reverence. They speak of you in hushed voices when they think you are not listening, using phrases like melancholic disposition and pensive temperament. One of them wrote in a ledger that your soul appeared to be under siege, as if your very spirit were a fortress breached by invisible armies. They do not call you gifted. They call you afflicted, peculiar, uncertain, but yesterday, something changed. A new visitor arrived at the monastery. She was not like the others. Her steps made no noise, but her presence rippled through the cloisters like the wind that sneaks under a heavy door. She wore silver bells in her hair, tiny ones, tied into slender braids that shimmered when she moved. At the hem of her dark cloak, a raven was embroidered in thread so fine it seemed to shift its feathers when she turned. She said little, only nodding to the friars as she passed, but her eyes searched. Not the books. Not the relics. She was looking for something else. She found you outside. You were bent over a patch of feverfew, gathering its bitter leaves with quiet concentration. You were aware of her before she spoke. A shadow beside you, still and watching. Then, softly, with a smile that curved like a question mark, she said, "You have the look." You stood slowly, dirt on your palms. Herbs in your satchel, and asked her, cautiously, what look? She didn't explain. Only said, the seers. Then she reached into her cloak and placed something smooth and cold into your hand. It was a small piece of polished obsidian, flat and perfect, dark enough to swallow light. "Foreseeing what others miss," she said, and then she walked away, bells singing faintly with every step. Since then, things have been different. It is subtle, but unmistakable. People are speaking to you with new voices. Not the condescending tone reserved for the strange. Not the wary edge used for the unstable. Instead, there is something else now. A kind of reverence, cautious and curious. They speak to you as if you are tuned to a frequency they cannot access. As if your silence means something. As if your dreams hold keys they have lost. The friars still watch with their careful eyes, pretending to be busy whenever you enter a room. But the novices, those younger ones who haven't yet learned to fear what they cannot name, they begin to ask you questions. Real questions. Tentative ones. About dreams. About visions. About whether you've ever touched a relic and felt a warmth that lingered in your bones. About symbols that appear in prayer. About voices that whisper when the world is still. You start to wonder, with no small measure of unease and wonder interwoven, is madness something else entirely? Is it possible that what they have always called madness is something more like magic? Beatrice certainly believes so. She says the child she carries in her arms, the one no one else can see, can open doors that were never built with hinges or wood. Doors that only exist if you know where to look. Roderick insists that his pebbles, the ones he arranges with such devotion, can tell the future, though only by lying. And Thomas, ever devoted to mystery, maintains that the tapping of his fingers is not random, but part of a language the trees taught him one summer at dusk. And what's strange is, no one laughs anymore, no one rolls their eyes. No one dismisses these claims outright. Something has shifted. The air is different now. Heavier, maybe. Or lighter. You're not sure. But definitely different. Then, one afternoon, a traveling noble arrives at the monastery. His carriage creaks with effort, though he carries no visible burden. His face is pale, waxen, his eyes sunken and ringed with exhaustion. The friars bustle around him, flustered and formal. They say he is plagued by invisible forces. He complains of sleeplessness, of thoughts that crawl across his mind like ants. Some say he is cursed. Others whisper that he simply eats too much, drinks too much, thinks too much. The friars pray. Long and loud and earnestly. The physician arrives and drains his blood into a bowl that is later buried in the garden. Nothing changes. His body stays rigid. His eyes twitch. His breath rasps. Then Beatrice leans forward. She does not shout or summon any heavenly host. She simply bends, close to the noble's ear, and whispers something that no one else can hear. Not even you. Whatever she says, it is quiet. Gentle. Almost like a lullaby. The noble does not reply, he only nods, once, slowly. And then, like a great tree finally tipping into sleep, he lies back and closes his eyes. For the first time in days, he sleeps, word travels, whispers turn into titles. Beatrice becomes known as the Whisperer. No one knows who gave her that name first, but now it fits. Roderick is given a new name too, the Stone Keeper. He accepts it with a bow, though he insists the stones chose it, not him. Thomas, of course, becomes the bird listener. He lives up to it. Birds follow him now, or at least seem to. He speaks to them in riddles, and sometimes they answer with a tilt of the head or a burst of song. And you become the dream hand. It begins one morning when you mention something from your dream. Something about a rosary that a novice lost 3 days ago. You describe a place. A hollow in the stone near the kitchens. He goes there, and finds it exactly as you described. You hadn't meant anything by it. The dream had been strange and foggy, and you only spoke of it because he looked so distressed. But now, they are watching you. They listen when you speak. They note what you mutter in your sleep. They ask questions not to correct you, but to understand. Soon, they begin to ask for your counsel, carefully. Quietly. One friar comes to you with hands that shake so badly he can barely lift his spoon. He asks if God is punishing him. You don't answer directly. You just listen. You let him speak. You say small things, soothing things. Not always logical. Sometimes stories. Sometimes metaphors. Sometimes nothing at all, but when he leaves, his hands are steadier. A woman from the village brings her daughter. The girl has not spoken in 3 weeks. You offer her a story about a bird that forgets how to sing, then finds its voice inside a waterfall. The girl says nothing. But her eyes soften, people leave lighter than they came, historians still debate what role the mad played in the medieval world. Whether those labeled lunatics or possessed were ever truly revered, or whether those stories were inventions meant to dull the sharpness of fear. But in certain pockets of that strange world, there were those who were not hidden. They were consulted. They were sought out. They spoke to kings. They guided healers. They interpreted dreams. You are not crowned. You are not sainted. No relics will bear your name. But people no longer flinch when you enter a room. At night, you keep the obsidian stone close. It rests beside your bed, smooth and weighty. You do not believe it has power. But you like the feel of it in your palm. When your thoughts scatter like foam on a river's edge, it is something solid. Something real. Beatrice now weaves crowns from grass and clover. She wears them without irony. Roderick has started building towers from his pebbles, delicate structures that somehow remain standing. Thomas gives speeches to the birds, who flutter and fidget and seem, in their own way, to tolerate him, and the friars, they do not interfere, not yet, they pass by your gatherings with folded hands and unreadable expressions. Maybe they are waiting for you to collapse into your old selves. Maybe they are preparing for it. Or perhaps, just perhaps, they are beginning to see something they had not considered before, that not everything the world calls madness is a sickness, sometimes, it is a kind of mirror. Yes, a cracked one. Yes, imperfect. But even cracked mirrors can reflect light. And light, when reflected at the right angle, can reveal things hidden in shadow. One evening, a storm rolls in without warning, the sky turns dark as ink. Rain falls in hard, diagonal sheets. Wind pushes through the cloister arches, whistling through stone like a beast searching for a door. Thunder breaks the sky into trembling pieces. The friars scurry inside, robes pulled tightly, muttering about divine tests and spiritual storms, but you do not run, you go out into the garden. Beatrice is there already, arms outstretched, face lifted. Roderick is barefoot, his towers washed away but his grin wide. Thomas spins in a circle, soaking wet, reciting lines to the clouds. You step into the rain, you laugh, you spin, you dance, because tonight, the thunder sounds like applause. The days grow quieter now, not because the struggle has vanished. That would be too simple. Too tidy. Too tempting to believe. The struggle remains. The ache is still there, a dull weight pressing beneath your ribs, present when you wake, when you walk, when you lie down. It no longer screams, but it does not vanish. The confusion still curls around the edges of your thoughts, a flickering shape just out of reach, like light glancing off a surface you cannot touch. The sleeplessness lingers too, trailing you into night like a shadow that refuses to detach. These burdens have not disappeared, but they have changed. They have quieted. They move beside you now instead of crushing you. Their claws have retracted, but they have not let go, and yet, something has changed, in the hush that settles over the cloisters, in the softness of morning light pooling along the chapel floor, in the stillness of the olive branches overhead, something new has taken root. It is not clarity, it is not resolution, it is something gentler. You find yourself moving differently now. Not because your legs are tired or your spirit is dimmed, but because your pace has shifted. You walk slowly, not because you are afraid, but because you are paying attention. You breathe more deeply, not because the air has changed, but because you have. You are not rushing toward healing like a destination. You are letting it meet you, moment by moment, wherever you are. You begin to notice things, the way the wind brushes the top of the fountain at dusk. The way Thomas's fingers tap more like a heartbeat than a drum. The way Beatrice pauses now before speaking, as if tasting each word before releasing it. The way Roderick balances his towers just so, with a care that speaks of patience rather than desperation. The courtyard has not grown larger. The walls have not softened. But it feels different now, less like confinement. More like a garden enclosed. The stone is still cold underfoot, but it no longer chills you. The olive tree remains twisted, gnarled in places, crooked in its posture, but it is no longer just a witness. It is a companion. You sit beneath it often, your back resting against the rough bark, your fingers trailing in the dust at its roots. You watch the wind tease fallen leaves into quiet spirals. You watch the sun trace its arc across the wall. You remember your arrival here, how the tree looked then, distant and foreign, as if it belonged to a world that had no place for you. Now, it feels like the only thing that has always known you. It has seen your broken mornings. It has seen the shaking of your hands. It has seen you scream and weep and go silent. And still it stands, unchanged and unbothered, offering shade without question. The others have shifted too. Thomas, who once tapped with wild eyes and frantic energy, now seems to move in rhythm with the birds around him. He hums sometimes, small tunes that have no words but carry the weight of memory. Beatrice, whose whispers once spun through the air like lost prayers, now speaks with tenderness, her tone wrapped in calm. Her invisible child, once the focus of her entire world, now rests quietly in her arms, more like a presence than a need. Roderick still stacks his stones, but where once his towers would tumble with each sigh of wind, now they hold, even when the sky groans. He does not fear collapse anymore. He simply rebuilds, and you are no longer standing on the edge of yourself, waiting to fall. You are learning what it means to remain. There are days you still tremble. Nights you still wake with your pulse racing. Thoughts that come without warning and knock you sideways. But you recover faster. You find stillness sooner. You recognize the darkness for what it is, and you do not mistake it for all of you. Sometimes, in the quiet of early dawn, you think back to the cage. The quiet cloister with its stone and silence. To the rituals that wrapped your body like ropes. To the smell of iron and blood and hope tangled into one. You think of the pilgrimage, the road that blistered your feet and scattered your spirit. You remember the relics, cold against your chest. The trembling in your hands when the prayers did not work. The way Bedlam seemed to echo even in the places meant to be holy. Those memories do not haunt you now. They inform you. They sit beside you like pages in a book you once read again and again. You understand something now that once escaped you entirely. Healing was never a staircase. Never a ladder you climbed rung by rung toward salvation. It was a path made of circles. A spiral of stops and stumbles. A winding forest trail filled with thorns and clearings, with mirages and moments of true vision. It has been rituals you did not understand at the time. It has been mistakes that taught you more than sermons. It has been long nights that turned into longer mornings and the miracle of surviving both. You remember the woman who arrived with silver bells in her hair and eyes like glassy water. You remember the raven embroidered into her cloak and the way she placed the obsidian stone into your hand. It sits now by your bed. Sometimes cool. Sometimes warm. Always solid. You do not believe it holds power, but you believe in what it represents. You think of the stories shared under storm-churned skies. Of laughter that bloomed despite the downpour. Of the mossy stones turned into thrones and the circles formed not for ritual but for comfort. You think of the notes you found, tucked into hidden corners. Scribbled words that carried more weight than sermons. Of the invisible child who smiled only for you. Of the friar who asked to sit and was named a knight. You think of what it means to hope without reason, what it means to find joy in nonsense. What it means to believe, even quietly, that not all brokenness requires fixing. The world outside remains unchanged in many ways, its fear still stings. Its systems still punish what they cannot categorize. Its eyes still narrow at difference. But you know something now that the world does not. Healing is not returning, healing is arrival, it is becoming someone else, someone tempered by pain, not defined by it. Someone who understands sorrow, but does not collapse beneath it. Someone who carries sadness like a stone in their pocket, not like a chain around their neck. Someone who knows that the mind is not a flaw, it is a labyrinth, and even labyrinths have centers. You sit beneath the olive tree. You close your eyes. The breeze touches your face, not cold, not harsh, just present. Just enough to remind you that you are here. That you have made it this far. That your breath is steady. That your heart still beats. You let the wind carry your thoughts the way it carries fallen leaves across the courtyard. You do not resist. You do not cling. You simply let go. Above you, the sky deepens. The day dims, and then, one by one, the stars begin to appear. They are not bright. Not piercing, they are faint, steady, certain. You open your eyes, you smile, because you know now what this place is. This is not confinement, this is not retreat, this is not a pause or a waiting room or a punishment. This is home. Hey, you made it. Truly. You made it to the end of a long, strange, tender journey into a world of medieval minds and quiet madness. Thank you for staying with me. If this journey meant something to you, if you felt seen or softened or simply held in some way, I would love to hear from you. Like, subscribe, or just share where you're listening, how you're doing, what you're dreaming. Now, as we step away from this story, let the stillness wrap around you. Turn off the lights. Open a window. Let the sound of a fan or gentle rain blur the edges of the room. Let your body sink into whatever holds it. Let your breath slow until it barely stirs the air. You are here. You are safe. You are becoming. This is the end, and also, somehow, the beginning. As the night deepens, allow each breath to slow, let it draw in calm, and let it release all the weight of today. Let your muscles loosen, one by one. Feel the quiet rise up around you, not as emptiness, but as presence. Picture the smooth stone floor beneath your feet, the ancient arches overhead, the hush of the cloister at night. Imagine that olive tree, rooted and weathered, still standing. Let the scent of the earth fill your thoughts, grounding you in something ancient and true. Let the silence of monks' prayers echo far away, fading like the tide, familiar and safe. You are not broken. You are not less, you are becoming, and you are enough. The stars above you shimmer gently, not bright and blinding, but soft and steady. Each one a pinprick of peace. A beacon of quiet hope. Let their light fill the places inside you where fear once lived. Let them remind you that the journey was worth it. That every step, even the ones that hurt, carried you here. Tonight, you rest, not only your body, but your spirit. You have wandered long, you have weathered storms and songs alike. And now, you find peace in stillness, so sleep well, dream kindly, and when morning comes, meet it gently, but for now, just breathe.